Chapter 476 I decided to send out troops in 3 months. After hearing Zhuge Kongguang's words, Lu Chen thought for a moment. Indeed, the plague in Dagon is becoming more and more serious. Even the Jin Yiwei they sent to Dagon have lost many people. They still don't know what the situation is in Dagon. Therefore, it is better not to attack Daqian rashly at this time. If the plague spreads to Daxia, I don't know how much trouble there will be next. Now there is only one target left, and that is the Dahu dynasty. At this time, Zhuge Kongguang continued, Dahu advocates force. Among the several major dynasties, the military strength is the strongest. Although it is relatively difficult to destroy the entire Dahu dynasty, if the strongest Dahu dynasty is destroyed from the beginning, and it can also form a certain deterrent to his dynasty. Once Dahu is destroyed, if your majesty destroys other dynasties in the future, other dynasties will definitely have no intention of fighting. Lu Chen thought for a moment, and that was true. Even the strongest Dahu had been destroyed. Dayu and Daqian would definitely weigh their own strength by then. Lu Chen said, in that case, as the great scholar said, I will destroy Dahu first, and then Dayu. After I figure out the plague situation in Daqian, I will send troops south. At this moment, the maid's voice sounded outside, Your Majesty, Commander Liang wants to see you. Seeing someone looking for Lu Chen, Zhuge Kongguang stood up and said, Your Majesty, if there is nothing else, I will leave. Lu Chen said, Grandmaster, don't worry, let's listen to what's going on together. After hearing Lu Chen's words, Zhuge Kongguang sat down again and said, Yes, Your Majesty. Soon, Liang Zong entered the royal study and said, Greetings to Your Majesty, long live Your Majesty. Lu Chen asked directly, What's the matter? Liang Zong took out a letter and handed it directly to Lu Chen, Your Majesty, the people we sent to Fenjian Island have returned. This is the investigation report they wrote on Fenjian Island. Upon hearing this, Lu Chen immediately took the letter from Liang Zong, then opened the envelope and read it carefully. After browsing the contents of the letter, Lu Chen's expression changed slightly. The materials for the cloud-piercing bow and cloud-piercing arrow made by the 8th prince came from Fenjian Island, and the god-killing spear also came from Fenjian Island. Lu Chen had always wondered whether there were some spaceships dropped from high-level worlds on Fenjian Island. So after he unified Daxia, the first thing he did was to send Jin Yiwei to Fenjian Island to investigate. The Jin Yiwei had been investigating for so long and finally got some news. Lu Chen browsed the investigation report written by the Jin Yiwei. He thought to himself that it seemed that it was exactly what he thought. There was indeed a spaceship that fell from the world of advanced civilization on Fenjian Island. It's just that the spaceship is extremely huge, and the materials used to make the spaceship are also very strong. There is no way to transport the spaceship to Yancheng. If he wanted to see what that spaceship looked like, he would have to go to Fenjian Island in person. I don't know if the functions of the spacecraft are still complete and whether it can operate. At this time, Lu Chen suddenly noticed some contents in the Jin Yiwei investigation report. The Jin Yiwei soldiers mentioned in the investigation report that the spacecraft had a lot of transparent glass, and they could see what was going on inside through the glass from the outside. There are some rooms inside the spaceship, and the rooms are very clean and tidy, as if someone lives in them regularly. Lu Chen was startled. There could be no one living in the spaceship on Fenjian Island. If that was the case, when the spaceship started operating, it might be equipped with very terrifying weapons. One shot destroyed the entire Daxia. Lu Chen then said to Liang Zong, let the Jinyi guards keep an eye on Fenjian Island. If there is anything abnormal about that mysterious building, report it to me immediately. Liang Zong immediately said, Yes, Your Majesty. Lu Chen then waved his hand, Go and do your work first. Subordinates resign. Immediately, Liang Zong left the imperial study. After Liang Zong left, Lu Chen directly flew the investigation report in his hand to Zhuge Kongguang. Grand Maester, also read what's above. Zhuge Chongguang immediately caught the paper that Lu Chen flew over. After seeing the contents of the investigation report, Zhuge Chongguang felt a little unbelievable. He said, "Your Majesty, could it be that the mysterious building is an extraterrestrial object?" Lu Chen did not answer immediately. He waved his hand casually, and the god-killing spear appeared in Lu Chen's hand. Seeing the strange weapon in Lu Chen's hand, Zhuge Chongguang was startled. Zhuge Chongguang felt the tremendous pressure emanating from the god-killing spear, and he had a hunch that this strange weapon could kill him in an instant. Lu Chen said, "This is the god-killing spear. The late emperor originally wanted to use this weapon to kill my master. Unfortunately, he suffered the backlash of this weapon in the end, and this weapon came from the mysterious man on Fenjian Island." Architecture. Zhuge Chongguang said, "In this case, the mysterious building on Fenjian Island may indeed be an alien object from the sky." Having said this, Zhuge Chongguang's face became a little more solemn, and he suddenly thought of something. "Your Majesty, I have a suspicion that the plague in Dakian is probably related to extraterrestrial objects." Zhuge Chongguang had been living in the Dakian dynasty in the past, and he knew the Dakian dynasty relatively well. He had never heard of such a serious plague in Dakian in the past. People in this era were not stupid. Although most people did not know the specific situation of the plague, they also knew some methods to prevent the plague, such as isolating all those who were sick and burning all those who died of the disease. In the past, there were small-scale plagues in Dakian. Not only Dakian, but other dynasties also had plagues. However, these plagues could subside within half a year at most. The plague in Dakian has been breaking out for such a long time, and now it is getting more and more serious. According to the information from Jin Yiwei's investigation, the Dakian court has tried every means to send troops to blockade the plague if it appears somewhere. But even so, there is absolutely no way to hinder the spread of the plague. Zhuge Chongguang felt that this plague was really weird. It was able to spread to the entire dynasty despite the various obstacles of the Dakian dynasty. This plague was obviously different from previous plagues. Since extraterrestrial objects have appeared on Fenjian Island, it is not impossible that extraterrestrial objects have appeared in the Dakian dynasty. It is very likely that the plague in Dakian was brought by extraterrestrial objects. Lu Chen was startled when he heard Zhuge Chongguang's guess. Zhuge Chongguang's speculation is entirely possible. If it is a common plague, people in this world will have ways to deal with it. Moreover, he has already passed on some knowledge about the plague to Jin Yiwei. Liang Zong sent Jin Yiwei to investigate in Dakian. We know what the plague is and how to prevent it, but many Jin Yiwei who were investigating in Dakian still died without knowing it. Either what happened in Dakian was done by the Taiyan sect, or the plague in Dakian had another source. Maybe some extraterrestrial objects really fell into Dakian and brought some deadly germs, causing Dakian to suffer such a devastating blow. Regardless of whether there were alien objects in Dakian, this gave Lu Chen a sense of urgency. After all, the world was not as safe as Lu Chen thought before. Not to mention that there may be people like the Taiyan cult leader in this world who have long since fallen from other worlds. Those strong men in the foggy area to the west are also a huge threat to this world. Nowadays, things on Fenjian Island are basically it was confirmed that it was an alien object from the sky, and Dakian was also suspected of having an alien object from the sky. Thinking about it this way, there might be quite a lot of alien objects in this world. The more Lu Chen thought about it, the more dangerous it became. You have to seize the time to dominate the world. After Lu Chen came to his senses, he said to Zhuge Chongguang, "Grand Master, I have decided to send out a large force in 3 months. What do you think?" Hearing Lu Chen's words, Zhuge Chongguang thought for a while. With the strength at your Majesty's side, 3 months is enough time to prepare. Lu Chen said, "Okay, then I will send out a large force in 3 months." End of chapter. Chapter 477. Lu Chen gets angry. After deciding on the time to send out troops, Lu Chen discussed the appointment of officials with Zhuge Chongguang. Most of the officials in the capital were still far less capable than the previous officials from the north. After all, Lu Chen had always let the officials from the north handle various matters independently, and Jin Yiwei had always supervised them. Lu Chen didn't want to arrange the officials in the capital into important positions, but if they were not given suitable positions, I'm afraid those officials in the capital would feel a little uncomfortable. After all, they followed him to Yanchenge. Unlike those old fritters who were hanging around in the capital waiting to die, these officials still had certain ambitions. How to arrange work for them involves many things. After Lu Chen and Zhuge Chongguang finished discussing the appointment of officials, the sunset had already set, leaving only the red glow hanging on the horizon. Seeing through the window that it was getting late, Lu Chen said, "Grand Master, please go back today. We will discuss the appointment of officials tomorrow." Zhuge Chongguang immediately stood up from his seat, bowed his hands to Lu Chen and said, "Old minister, please retire." Zhuge Chongguang then turned around and left the imperial study. After Zhuge Chongguang left, Lu Chen went directly to Fenjiayun Palace. When Lu Chen entered Fenjiayun Palace, he saw Zhou Yuyu and Zhou Xiaoxiao were there. Zhou Yuyu and Zhou Xiaoxiao were very worried about Mu Zixuan's condition. After all, Lu Chen did not let Mu Zixuan sleep with him on the first night after returning. "Let Chu Yukan sleep with you." Naturally, it is not easy for the two of them to interfere in this kind of thing, but they can stay by Mu Zixuan's side and comfort Mu Zixuan. Zhou Xiaoxiao and Zhou Yuyu stayed in Fenjiayun Palace for the whole day today. Just when Mu Zixuan was about to prepare dinner, the maid outside suddenly shouted loudly, "Your Majesty is here." Hearing this, the three women were stunned for a moment, and then quickly came out to greet them. Before Mu Zixuan could salute, Lu Chen said, "Xiao Xiao and Yuyu are both here, just in time. Don't go back tonight, just stay in Fenjiayun Palace." Hearing this, the three women instantly understood what Lu Chen meant, and Zhou Xiaoxiao and Zhou Yuyu couldn't help but blush on their faces. Lu Chen looked at Mu Zixuan and said, "Zixuan, it's so late, dinner should be ready." Mu Zixuan said quickly, "Ready, I will let the servants serve the food." Immediately, Mu Zixuan ordered the maid to go and talk to the restaurant and serve the food quickly. Lu Chen also walked directly towards Fenjiayun Palace at this time. After entering Fenjiayun Hall, Lu Chen sat at the round dining table. Mu Zixuan, Zhou Xiaoxiao and Zhou Yuyu also hurried over, but they did not sit down immediately. Now that Lu Chen's identity is different, they don't dare think of being as casual as before. Seeing that Mu Zixuan and Zhou Xiaozhou were both standing, Lu Chen said with a smile, "Why are you two so afraid of me when I come back this time, as if I were a stranger? Sit down quickly." Hearing Lu Chen's words, Mu Zixuan, Zhou Xiaoxiao and Zhou Yuyu said in unison, "Thank you, Your Majesty." After the words fell, the three women sat down. Seeing how reserved they were, Lu Chen said in a calm tone, "Although I am already the emperor, this is the inner palace and my home. You are my wives and concubines, my women and the closest people to me. Do you all want to alienate me so much and make me a loner?" Although Lu Chen's tone was very calm, Mu Zixuan and the three girls could instantly tell that Lu Chen was angry. Lu Chen had rarely been angry before, and this was the first time they had seen Lu Chen speak so seriously. The three women stood up from their stools in unison, and then quickly knelt on the ground. Mu Zixuan said, "Your Majesty, we have no such idea." Seeing the three women kneeling on the ground trembling, Lu Chen sighed. Sure enough, as he thought, as long as he takes this position, he will eventually become a loner. It is said that the emperor has no family affairs, it is all state affairs. Even in the harem, the emperor's wives and concubines must remain monarchs and ministers in front of the emperor. Although Lu Chen knew that this was the case in this era, it made him feel very uncomfortable. Lu Chen also understood that even if a person like the emperor, who had the power of life and death, said that his wives and concubines should be free, they would not dare to be presumptuous. After all, he could let them and the family behind them do so with just one word. Perish. Moreover, compared to his father, he has more power, and his father is still restricted by the family, but now he is in charge of the government, he can do whatever he says, and no one can restrict him. For an emperor with such great power, it is almost impossible for his wives and concubines not to be afraid of him. Lu Chen said at this time, "Zixuan, you have been married to me for several years. Don't you know what kind of person I am?" Hearing this question, Mu Zixuan was stunned for a moment, and then said, "Your Majesty is kind, harmonious, and ambitious. He is a wise king who is rare to see in 10,000 years." Lu Chen was very dissatisfied with this return home. Mu Zixuan's words were too polite. Lu Chen then stood up from the stool, walked directly in front of Mu Zixuan, and then squatted down. Mu Zixuan was stunned again. Lu Chen looked into Mu Zixuan's eyes and said, "Zixuan, do you think this is okay? I will issue an order to the inner palace. My wives and concubines are not allowed to kneel down in front of me." This. Mu Zixuan instantly understood what Lu Chen meant. Lu Chen was very dissatisfied with the behavior of the three of them today. Mu Zixuan then said, "Your Majesty, I know I was wrong." Lu Chen said, "You know you're wrong, why don't you get up quickly? You want to kneel down so much? When you go to bed later, I will let you kneel down as much as you want on the bed." The three Mu Zixuan girls instantly heard the implication of Lu Chen's words, and their cheeks instantly became more rosy and extremely hot. Then the three women got up from the ground. Mu Zixuan said at this time, "Your Majesty, I understand what you mean, but today's palace is no longer the North Palace of the past. There are so many eyes staring at the palace. If the concubine in the palace is disrespectful, he will definitely be in the future." He was impeached in court. It is said that the emperor has no selfless affairs. As long as the ministers know about the affairs of the harem, those ministers will definitely talk about it when they go to court, and then they will use it as an opportunity to start a political struggle. This was very common no matter which dynasty it was in, so Mu Zixuan and the others had nothing to do. Even if they knew that Lu Chen was not used to them being so cautious towards him, it would make Lu Chen feel that he had become a loner, but they also consider the consequences of being disrespectful. After hearing what Mu Zixuan said, Lu Chen then said, "In the future, I will issue an order. The affairs of the harem are my family affairs. No ministers are allowed to talk about it, unless it is about some industries you operate outside or certain things you do. It affects Daxia." Just as Mu Zixuan was thinking about something, Lu Chen immediately said, "Okay, this matter is settled." At this point, Lu Chen glanced at Mu Zixuan and Zhou Xiaozhou, and then continued, "I will only say one thing, if you really make me a loner and make me feel that I have no family ties, then I will not be able to do anything in the future. It's really not about emotions. I believe you don't want to see an emperor like my father, right?" Hearing this, the three women were startled. Naturally, they didn't want to see Lu Chen turn into a cold and heartless emperor. After Lu Chen finished speaking, he came to the dining table again and sat down. At this time, the servants had already started serving food. Lu Chen said, "Hurry up and sit down." After the three Mu Zixuan girls came to their senses, they quickly came to the dining table and sat down. After Lu Chen's words just now, the three girls were no longer as cautious as before. After the food was served, one of Zhou Xiaoxiao and Zhou Yuyu prepared a cup for Lu Chen, and the other poured wine for Lu Chen. Lu Chen said to Mu Zixuan at this time, "Zixuan, after going to court yesterday, a minister came to me and talked to me about establishing a queen." Hearing this, Zhou Xiaoxiao and Zhou Yuyu felt their hearts tighten. End of chapter. Chapter 478 Li Rui's Troubles. Hearing Lu Chen mention the queen, Mu Zixuan instantly understood why Lu Chen went to Chu Yukin's place last night and did not let her sleep with her. She knew very well the status of Chu Yukin in Lu Chen's heart. Lu Chen must have gone to find Chu Yukin to discuss the queen. When the queen was mentioned, Mu Zixuan couldn't help but sigh slightly in her heart. She really didn't want to get involved in this kind of thing again. It's a pity that this is not what she wants. As Lu Chen's princess, she will definitely participate in this kind of thing. After Lu Chen glanced at Mu Zixuan's reaction, he said directly, "My plan is for Feng Er to be the crown prince, but not to establish a queen." Hearing these words, Mu Zixuan felt relieved. She instantly saw Lu Chen's intention. Ever since Lu Chen had more women, Lu Chen had been emphasizing the harmony of his harem. He did not want any women to compete for power in his harem. Lu Chen chose not to establish a queen, most likely because he did not want the queen to be targeted. On the other hand, he probably also wanted to tell the women in the harem that he would never establish a queen, so don't worry about climbing up. Lu Chen continued, "Although I will not establish a queen, I will establish an imperial concubine. From now on, there will only be a difference between an imperial concubine and a noble concubine in my harem. There will be no hierarchy under the imperial concubine." Hearing this, Mu Zixuan thought that it was exactly what she thought. Everything Lu Chen did was for the harmony of the harem. Mu Zixuan then said, "This matter is entirely up to your majesty." Lu Chen asked, "Zixuan, you won't feel sad because I didn't make you my queen, right?" Hearing Lu Chen's probing words, Mu Zixuan quickly replied, "Your Majesty, I am actually not interested in the position of queen at all. Not only am I not interested, I don't want to get involved in the dispute between queens. Your Majesty also knows what happened to the Mu family. I am tired of those things and don't want my children to be involved. I just want to see my children grow up safely." Lu Chen sighed and said, "Actually, I don't want my children to be involved. After all, I encountered life and death crises many times back then. Brothers killed each other, and fathers and sons killed each other. I never want to see it again. Unfortunately, I am now in this position. My child will inevitably be involved in some things in the future. I only hope that Feng Er can grow up as soon as possible under my protection and be on his own, so that no one else will have anything else in the future." Idea. Mu Zixuan understood Lu Chen's thoughts instantly. Lu Chen wanted to stabilize Lu Changfeng's position as the heir to the throne while he was still alive. As long as Lu Changfeng's position was stable enough, he could naturally break it. "What some people think," Lu Chen said at this time, "Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. Let's eat. The food will be cold later." Then the four of them stopped discussing the topic about the queen and prince, and they started talking about the children. After dinner, the four of them went to bathe in the bath. After bathing, they came to the big bed in Fenjiayun Palace. In order to punish them for alienating him, Lu Chen made Mu Zixuan and the others kneel for almost a whole night, and also beat the three of them. The cries of Mu Zixuan and the others could be heard outside Fenjiayun Palace. The sky gradually turned white, and Lu Chen let the three of them go. Mu Zixuan and the others, also under Lu Chen's education, promised Lu Chen that they would never dare to alienate him again. In the morning, Lu Chen simply drank some porridge and then went to the imperial study room to handle government affairs. The appointment list of ministers has not been drawn up yet, and we have to work for a day today. Not long after Lu Chen arrived at the imperial study, Zhuge Chongguang came to the imperial study again and continued to discuss the structure of the court and the appointment of officials with Lu Chen. While Lu Chen was busy, the officials from the capital who followed Lu Chen to Yancheng were also trying their best to curry favor with the ministers from the northern kingdom, especially Li Rui. Zhuge Chongguang is a bachelor of Wen'ai Yuan Pavilion and Lu Chen will summon him at any time, so he has always lived in the place closest to Luang Palace. It is difficult for the ministers to see him, and the ministers do not dare to run so close to Luang Palace with great fanfare. To curry favor with Zhuge Chongguang, the person most ministers chose to fawn over was Li Rui. At this moment, inside the Li mansion, Li Rui sat in the hall, drinking tea and sighing, as if something worried him. At this time, a servant hurriedly ran in and said, "Master, another person is here. That person is said to be a minister of the former imperial court." Li Rui waved his hand quickly, No, just say I'm sick and I'm still lying in bed." Li Rui is not a fool. He is very aware of Jin Yiwei's abilities. If he really meets those officials from the capital, he will not know how he will die. Thinking of this, Li Rui couldn't help but sigh. He never imagined that he, Li Rui, would be where he is today. When King Bei came to Beijun, he was just an ordinary county guard. Although his life was better than that of ordinary people, he was still better than those officials in the capital. They are far apart. Unexpectedly, in just a few years, he has become a high-ranking person, and now it is the officials in the capital who are trying to curry favor with him. Li Rui was a little lucky in his heart. Fortunately, when Bei Wang came to Beijun, he did not go against Bei Wang because he was a waste. Instead, he handed over the military power to Lu immediately. Chen, and also actively cooperated with Lu Chen to complete the reform of Beijun. Of course, the most critical thing was when Lu Chen gave them a choice, when he asked Beijun officials to choose whether to leave Beijun or stay in Beijun, he chose to stay in Beijun without any hesitation. If he had not made the right choice in any matter, it would be hard to say whether he would still be alive now, let alone his current status. He has now figured out Lu Chen's character. Although Lu Chen seems to delegate power everywhere and leave most things to his ministers, Lu Chen's control over the court is extremely terrifying. Lu Chen is different from traditional kings. Lu Chen only makes decisions in general directions, and then leaves everything to his ministers, and lets the royal guards supervise the execution of the ministers. If it were with other emperors, the previous court would have been all trivial matters, but here, Lu Chen only talked about state affairs, and no trivial matters were allowed to be mentioned. Just when Li Rui was distracted, another servant suddenly came in from outside. The servant came to Li Rui in a panic and said, "Master, someone is coming from the palace." Hearing this, Li Rui came back to his senses instantly, and his face turned pale with fright. He knew that what happened today would definitely attract the emperor's attention, but he did not expect that the emperor would send someone here so soon. But Li Rui quickly calmed down his inner panic. He thought to himself that he did not really accept gifts from the officials in the capital, and he did not even meet them. The emperor sent someone to most likely remind him, and I'm not here to ask questions. Thinking of this, Li Rui immediately said, "Please invite that person in quickly." Soon, the servant entered the courtyard with a female guard. After seeing Li Rui, the female guard took out a gold medal and said directly, "Master Li, Your Majesty has spoken. If there are officials from the capital visiting you, you can contact them appropriately and talk to them about the official rules of the Northern Kingdom." Hearing this, Li Rui was stunned. He originally thought that the emperor was looking for someone to remind him not to form cliques, but he didn't expect that the emperor actually took the initiative to let him meet the officials in the capital. Soon Li Rui understood what the emperor meant. The emperor planned to use his words to let the ministers in the capital know in advance what should be done and what should not be done. In this way, the officials in the capital could be more confident. Quickly integrate into the new court. Li Rui immediately said, "Please tell Your Majesty that I will definitely complete the tasks assigned by Your Majesty and let those people know what should be done and what should not be done." After hearing Li Rui's answer, the female guard didn't say anything more and left directly. End of chapter. Chapter 479. Of course I came here to miss my Wan He. After the female guard sent by Lu Chen to deliver the message left, Li Rui immediately asked his servants to notify the officials in the capital who were still at the door and asked them to enter the hall together. The officials in the capital were very happy when they heard that Li Rui, the former third in command of the Northern Kingdom, was going to meet them. They are not fools. They naturally understand that Li Rui said he was sick because he didn't want to see them. Now that Li Rui wants to see them, he has obviously figured it out. Soon, a group of officials from the capital came to the reception hall of Li Mansion. When everyone entered the reception hall, Li Rui said directly, "I know why you came to Li's mansion today, but before that, I would like to say that you will bring all the gifts you brought later. Go back." Yancheng is different from Beijing. Giving gifts casually in Yancheng can easily cause trouble. When they heard this, everyone was stunned for a moment, but they had all been in officialdom for so many years, and they quickly understood what Li Rui meant. Li Rui continued, "Our Majesty is different from any previous emperor. If we want to gain a foothold in Yancheng, we must figure out what kind of people His Majesty needs as soon as possible. If you have any questions, you can ask them now. I can answer them one by one for you today. However, after today, you can't all rush to the Li Mansion like today." Hearing Li Rui's direct words, an official from the capital immediately said, "Master Li, I have a question and I would like to ask Master Li." Li Rui said, "If there is anything you don't understand, just ask." The man asked, "Your Majesty's decision to hold court meetings once every 7 days really won't affect the flow of government affairs?" Li Rui replied, "No, although the court meeting is held once every 7 days, Your Majesty will not do nothing during these 7 days. Your Majesty will handle various government affairs in the imperial study. The reason why His Majesty changed the court meeting to once every 7 days is mainly because His Majesty knew that some ministers always mentioned trivial matters in the morning court. As a result, the court meeting was not only meaningless, but also delayed for half a day, seriously affecting the efficiency of the officials. If there was no morning meeting, officials would have to go to their workplaces during working hours. This would actually improve work efficiency." Another official asked, "If there is no morning court, how will we know if something happens to Your Majesty?" Li Rui said, "Why do you think His Majesty has scheduled a court meeting every 7 days? During the court meeting, His Majesty will arrange all the work for the next 7 days. If something unexpected happens, His Majesty will naturally send someone to notify the superior department, and then the superior department will give orders to lower-level departments." Li Rui glanced at the officials in the hall and continued, "Our Majesty is a practical person. He dislikes bringing everything up to the court meeting. From now on, you must remember that anything that has nothing to do with the country's affairs should not be discussed. Take it to the court and tell it. Especially the affairs of the harem are His Majesty's family affairs. You must not touch them. In addition, the Ministry of Rights of the new Imperial Court is a pension department. If any of you enter the Ministry of Rights in the future, you only need to follow His Majesty's arrangements. Don't come here in one day. If you talk about etiquette at night, what His Majesty dislikes the most is people who talk about etiquette, justice, and integrity, but in the end do not work." Hearing this, an official was not happy. He immediately said, "Master Li, the Emperor has no family affairs, and the affairs of the harem should also be state affairs." Li Rui glanced at the man and then said, "I am just reminding you that if you don't listen to me and something happens, don't blame me." Li Rui's tone was serious, and the man didn't say anything more. Li Rui continued, "The most important point is that you should not think about giving or accepting bribes. Your Majesty has an agency that specifically monitors hundreds of officials, called Jinyue. Jinyue is pervasive. Whatever you do, Your Majesty will be the first to do so. Time will know." After hearing what Li Rui said, the officials finally understood why Li Rui asked them to take all the gifts back. At this time, an official asked cautiously, "Master Li, in this case, Your Majesty will soon know what you said to us today." Hearing this question, Li Rui laughed, and then said, "His Majesty has known about your coming to the Li Mansion for a long time. Why do you think I didn't see you at the beginning and suddenly want to see you again? This. Everyone immediately understood what Li Rui meant. So, what Li Rui told them was the intention of the person in the palace. No wonder what Li Rui said sounded so like beating them. It turned out that this was what the emperor wanted to say to them, and Li Rui was just conveying the emperor's meaning. Then Li Rui talked about the official structure of Yanqing with the officials present, and also told them how Yanqing officials were treated in the past. After listening to Li Rui's words, the officials in the capital also had a general understanding of the official situation in Yanqing and Lu Chen's behavior style. Lu Chen and Zhuge Chongguang discussed for almost a day before finalizing the appointment list of officials for the new court. In the evening, Lu Chen originally planned to go to Yelunanyan's place, but he suddenly thought of something, so he turned around and went to where Wu Yunwan lived. Wu Yunwan still lives with Murong Shuer. After all, neither of them has officially married Lu Chen and has no status. And despite the fact that they always quarrel, Murong Shuer and Wu Yunwan still have a lot of things in common. They are both related to Emperor Yu, and they are both Lu Chen's women. Whether they are talking about Emperor Yu or Lu Chen, they can talk about everything. At this time, the sun was setting in the west, and the red rays of light shone on Wu Yunwan's plump and perfect figure. This scene was like a beautiful picture. Wu Yunwan stood in the pavilion, and Murong Shuer stood next to her. Wu Yunwan said at this time, "Why don't you go to the imperial study to find that person?" Murong Shuer said, "Didn't the eldest princess go too?" Wu Yunwan said calmly, "I am busy with affairs now, unlike you who have nothing to do all day long and sit in your room drawing and thinking about men every day." Since Lu Chen left Baiguo, Murong Shuer often painted Lu Chen's portrait in the room, thinking about him when he saw the painting. Hearing Wu Yunwan's words, Murong Shuer raised her eyebrows slightly, and then said, "Your Highness, it is not a good habit to peek at other people's things." Just when Wu Yunwan was about to say something, a familiar voice suddenly came from not far away, "It's really not a good habit to peek at other people's things. Yunwan, you can't do this again." Hearing this voice, the two women were slightly startled. After coming back to their senses, they both looked in the direction from which the voice came. Sure enough, they saw the bad man who had haunted them in their dreams. Wu Yunwan said at this time, "Your Majesty, why are you here today? Your Majesty is not afraid that the wives and concubines in the harem will be jealous?" After all, Wu Yunwan and Murong Shuer didn't have any status, and they followed Lu Chen later. According to the queue, it wasn't their turn yet. As a result, it was only the third day that Lu Chen came to see them. Upon hearing Wu Yunwan's question, Lu Chen transformed and appeared directly behind the two women, then opened his arms and directly wrapped his arms around the soft waists of the two women. "Of course I come here because I miss my Wan and Shuer." End of this chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 480 Your Majesty is really persistent in reproducing future generations. After Lu Chen finished speaking, the paws he placed on the waists of the two women slowly slid down, and finally placed them on their buttocks. Wu Yun rolled her eyes at this lecherous man, and then said, "Your Majesty came to us, probably to find out what Emperor Yu did after Your Majesty left Yanqing." Lu Chen smiled slightly, neither admitting nor denying. There is indeed a reason why he came to Wu Yunwan today. Although he also read Jin Yiwei's report, he still didn't know the specific situation. He wanted to know how Wu Yunwan rejected Yu Wang's request for cooperation. Lu Chen said, "Okay, let's not talk about this for now. I just came out of the imperial study room to handle government affairs, and now I'm hungry too." After hearing this, Wu Yunwan immediately said to the maid outside the pavilion, "Let the restaurant prepare dinner and tell them that His Majesty is here." "Yes, ma'am." Then the maid turned around and left, heading to the dining room. At this time, Lu Chen held the two women's waists and walked towards the palace. As he walked, he said, "I haven't seen each other for almost a year. I wonder if the two ladies miss me. Hearing this, Wu Yunwan said coldly, I have so many things to do every day, so I don't have time to think about men, but this talented girl from Daiyu next to me spends all day in the room painting His Majesty's portrait. If you let her serve His Majesty tonight, I guarantee that she will serve His Majesty comfortably. Murong Shuer on the side was not angry when she heard Wu Yunwan's words. She said calmly, I am just painting a portrait of His Majesty. Unlike some people who look dignified and noble on the surface and sleep with the quilt between their mouths at night. Your Majesty, kept shouting. This. Wu Yunwan was about to refute Murong Shuer, but Lu Chen interrupted and said, I didn't expect the two ladies to have such a hard life, but you don't have to worry, I'm back, and I will definitely let the two ladies sleep well tonight. Sleep. Hearing this, the two women thought in unison, sleep? I'm afraid I won't get any sleep tonight. After the three of them entered the main hall, soon the servants and maids in the palace began to serve food. Lu Chen picked up his chopsticks and asked while eating, Yunwan, I remember when I left Yanqing, Emperor Yu invited you to join us in wreaking havoc in Yanqing. How did you reject her later? Hearing Lu Chen's question, Wu Yunwan said, Your Majesty is really here for this matter. You really can't believe what a man says. Lu Chen smiled and said, I just asked casually. Wu Yunwan replied directly, I rejected her directly. I said that although you left Yanqing, there is still Zhuge Chongguang, a pseudo-celestial being, who is stationed in Yanqing, and there are probably other forces behind you who want to. It's very difficult to cause damage. Lu Chen continued to ask, she didn't doubt you. Wu Yunwan said, no, but she still sent people to try to steal the secrets of the Northern Kingdom from the Northern Kingdom. Unfortunately, I knew about it in advance, so I told the people she arranged to Jin Yiwei, and then all her plans failed. Lu Chen asked curiously, is Emperor Yu unwilling to give in? Wu Yunwan replied calmly, I don't know. She hasn't written to me for a long time. The situation in the north is unstable now, and her thoughts are in the north. Hearing this, Lu Chen stopped picking up vegetables and floated his hands in mid-air. Northern? Is there something strange happening to the barbarians? Wu Yunwan said, your Jin Yiwei is so powerful, it's impossible that he doesn't know that the barbarians have now been unified, right? Lu Chen said, I heard that the barbarians seem to have an extra goddess, and that goddess seems to be very powerful. Wu Yunwan said, it is indeed very powerful. A woman can reunify the fragmented barbarians. She not only has the means, but also has great strength. Qin Guo noticed that the woman planned to lead troops south, and within the past few years. Lu Chen said with a smile, then she has something to worry about. You can write to her then. If she has any difficulties, she can ask our Daxia for help. I will be happy to help her. Wu Yunwan glanced at Lu Chen, and then said expressionlessly, do you really think she is a fool? Don't you know what you want to do? Lu Chen said with a smile, I'm just saying casually, it's hard to say whether Daiyu can still hold on until the barbarians move south. Hearing this, Wu Yunwan and Murong Shuer were startled. What does Lu Chen mean by this? Could it be? Is he planning to attack Daiyu? After Wu Yunwan came to her senses, she looked at Lu Chen's face and asked tentatively, are you ready to kill Daiyu? Lu Chen said calmly, not yet. If we want to destroy him, we must destroy Dahua first. This. Wu Yunwan's mood was a little complicated at this time. After all, she was Dahua's person. Although she had completely fallen in love with Lu Chen, she still felt uncomfortable when she heard that Lu Chen wanted to destroy Dahua. Wu Yunwan then asked, if Dahua is really destroyed, how do you plan to deal with the Dahua royal family? Lu Chen replied without hesitation, give them some money and some land, so that they can have enough food and clothing for the rest of their lives. Wu Yunwan said, it won't be that simple. Wu Yunhuan did not think that Lu Chen would rest assured that Dahu's royal family would continue to exist. As long as all members of Dahu's royal family were not dead, some people in Dahu would probably have other thoughts, which would not be conducive to Lu Chen's unification. Before Lu Chen said anything, Wu Yunhuan continued, even if you choose to let them live at the beginning, after a few years, you will find a way to slowly get rid of them. Lu Chen said with a smile, if you had given birth to a few children for me and you had protected them, maybe I wouldn't have done this. Hearing this, Wu Yunhuan snorted coldly, Your Majesty is really persistent in reproducing future generations. Lu Chen smiled and said nothing more. They had dinner for about half an hour. After dinner, Lu Chen took Wu Yunhuan and Mirong Shui by their waists and went to the bathing pool, where he did bad things to them. At the same time, Great Xia Dynasty, the Empress's palace. Emperor Yu wore a bright red phoenix robe and a phoenix crown, sitting on a phoenix chair inlaid with gold and precious stones. At this time, she held in her hand a piece of information that had just been sent from Yancheng. Seeing the contents of the intelligence, Emperor Yu fell into silence. At this time, Emperor Yu slowly stood up, walked to the bed, and looked at the bright stars outside the window. After a long time, Emperor Yu asked the female guard kneeling outside the curtain, Are these sources accurate? The female guard said, Your Majesty, although this matter is very secretive, we can still detect it through some clues. After all, there are so many people in Daxia's palace all of a sudden. There is a mix of good and bad. There will always be someone who accidentally leaks something. The spies sent the news about his return is almost certain to be true. After hearing the guard's answer, Emperor Yu took another look at the information in his hand. The information in her hand mentioned that Wu Yunhuan had taken over some industries in the North Kingdom shortly after she went to the North Country, and many maids called Wu Yunhuan Mrs. Wu. Although most of the maids in the previous Buwang mansion had been trained and knew what to say and what not to say, due to the construction of the palace, many new people were recruited into the Buwang mansion. As a result, some newcomers couldn't control their mouths and leaked Wu Yunhuan's affairs. There was nothing that could be done about it. When the palace was being built, Lu Chen was not in Yancheng, and Mu Zixuan and the others neglected many things. At this time, Emperor Yu fell into a long silence. The cold moonlight fell on her body, reflecting her cold and beautiful face. Emperor Yu was a little confused as to why Wu Yunhuan never mentioned in her letter to him that she had taken over some of the properties of Buwang Mansion. The most important point is why the maids and servants in the inner courtyard of the former northern palace called Wu Yunhuan Mrs. Wu. In addition, Wu Yunhuan rejected his proposal, which had to make Emperor Yu wonder whether Wu Yunhuan had become that man's woman. Thinking of this, Emperor Yu looked up out of the window again and looked at the full moon in the sky. Scenes of her past experiences with Wu Yunhuan emerged in her mind. After she and Wu Yunhuan left this world and went to the mist world, they suffered a lot and encountered a lot of dangers. It can be said that they were friends of life and death. So even if she takes the ruthless path, she still trusts Wu Yunhuan very much. Wu Yunhuan has a very important position in her heart. She never thought that Wu Yunhuan would one day hide something from herself because of a man. End of chapter. Chapter 481. No one can take you away from me. A gust of cold wind blew into the Empress's palace, causing the red curtains to sway constantly. Emperor Yu stood in front of the window, silent for a long time. At this time, in her mind, the strange behavior of Wu Yunhuan after going to Yancheng were all connected together, and she had to wonder whether Wu Yunhuan had really devoted herself to that man. She understands Wu Yunhuan's character very well. Wu Yunhuan is a person who refuses to admit defeat. Even if she is in a life or death crisis, she will probably not give up what she wants to do. Therefore, Emperor Yu did not think that Wu Yunhuan was forced to seek refuge with Lu Chen. As long as she wanted to, she could even escape from Yancheng directly. Since Wu Yunhuan chose to stay in Yancheng, and also took care of Daxia's property for Lu Chen, and was even willing to be the so-called Mrs. Wu, then Wu Yunwan most likely did it voluntarily. And if she hadn't done it voluntarily, she would have written to herself long ago, asking herself to help her escape Yanchenge. When Lu Chen went south, Wu Yunwan had the opportunity, but unfortunately Wu Yunwan did not choose to escape. Emperor Yu looked at the cold moon in the sky and murmured, "Yunwan, what on earth are you doing? Did her good sister really choose Lu Chen? What is the charm of this man?" Not only did he instigate Murong Shuer to rebel, but he also made his good sister, who was close to him life and death, lie to him. After an unknown amount of time, sword energy was released from Emperor Yu's body. The sword energy was raging in the palace, and countless things were destroyed by the sword energy. Emperor Yu looked at the moon in the sky with a firm expression, a murderous intent flashing in his eyes. "No matter what you are doing, I will snatch you back. No one can take you away from me." Although Emperor Yu is still not sure whether Wu Yunwan has really betrayed their friendship, Emperor Yu has made up his mind. No matter what happens, Wu Yunwan must be removed from Lu Chen's side. Grab it back. She also knew that there were 4 heavenly beings around Lu Chen now, but so what? So what if there were 4 heavenly beings? As the Empress of Dayu, she would not be afraid of any difficulties. At this moment, in Wu Yunwan's palace, Wu Yunwan and Murong Shuer came and went. Sometimes it was Wu Yunwan's voice, and sometimes it was Murong Shuer's voice. Throughout the night, their voices gradually stopped. A ray of sunshine in the early morning shone on Bai Huahua's body. Lu Chen thought at this moment that maybe this was the reason why Wu Yunwan and the others were rated 90%. Although he has never done anything like that with a woman with an 80 rating, he already understands why his wives and concubines have a 90 rating, especially Wu Yunwan's ability to control muscles. All I can say is that they are all extremely talented. After feeling the sunshine coming in from the window, Wu Yunwan looked at Lu Chen, who was lying on Murong Shuer's back, and then said, "Your Majesty must be very busy these days, right?" Lu Chen smiled and replied, "It's true that I'm a little busy." Wu Yunwan said, "Then why doesn't your Majesty get up? Although I don't know what time it is, I know from the sunlight coming in from the window that it's definitely not too late." Lu Chen smiled faintly, "Don't you want me to spend more time with you?" Wu Yunwan said, "State affairs are important." After hearing Wu Yunwan's words, Lu Chen immediately let go of Murong Shuer, and then stood up slowly, "You are right, state affairs are important." Having said this, Lu Chen grabbed Wu Yunwan's wrist and pulled her directly into his arms. "Wash it." After the words fell, Lu Chen picked up Wu Yunwan in a princess hug, then threw Murong Shuer alone on the bed and walked directly towards the bath in the side hall. At this time, Murong Shuer also wanted to get up, but her whole body was limp and she could only watch their leaving figures. Murong Shuer sighed slightly, she had truly fallen and could no longer live without this bastard. Soon Lu Chen carried Wu Yunwan to the bathing pool. Wu Yunwan didn't hold it either. She took the initiative to pick up a towel and wipe Lu Chen's back. Seeing this scene, Lu Chen smiled and said, "When will the eldest princess be able to serve others?" Wu Yunwan snorted coldly, said nothing more, and continued with her movements. Lu Chen is already the emperor, and he is an emperor who can unify the entire continent. Wu Yunwan also knows that she is nothing in front of Lu Chen, and she can still recognize her position clearly. Moreover, Lu Chen wants to destroy Dahu next. If he still wants to act like before, what if he accidentally offends this lecher one day and this guy kills all the Dahu royal family? Although she had no feelings for the Dahu royal family, after all, those people were related to her by blood, so it was still difficult for her to completely ignore them. Lu Chen naturally saw what Wu Yunwan was thinking, and he suddenly said, "After Dahu is destroyed, I will not kill anyone from the Dahu royal family unless they rebel." Wu Yunwan was not surprised when she heard Lu Chen's words. She continued to wipe Lu Chen's body. This may be true or it may be false. After all, what Lu Chen said was perfect. He added, unless they rebel after this sentence. To rebel or not is not a matter of Lu Chen's words. If Lu Chen wants to get rid of the Dao royal family, he will naturally lay some charges against them. Once Dao was destroyed, the life and death of the Dao royal family depended on Lu Chen's thoughts. Wu Yunhuan did not take Lu Chen's promise seriously. At this moment, Lu Chen suddenly thought of something and continued, "By the way, there is one more thing I almost forgot to tell you." Wu Yunhuan asked curiously, "What's the matter?" Lu Chen replied, "I plan to make you the imperial concubine." Hearing this, Wu Yunhuan was startled. She is the princess of Dao, and the imperial concubine is second only to the queen. How could Lu Chen let her be the imperial concubine? Wu Yunhuan then said, "If Dao is destroyed, I will be the princess of the country. Aren't you afraid that your wives and concubines will be dissatisfied? There will definitely be a lot of opposition in Daxia by then." Lu Chen said with a smile, "In addition to you being the imperial concubine, Zixuan is also the imperial concubine, Aunt Chu is also the imperial concubine, and Nan Yan is also the imperial concubine." Wu Yunhuan was stunned again. Other emperors only appointed one or at most two concubines, but Lu Chen was planning to appoint 4 people as concubines. They are all royal concubines, so who will be the queen? Logically speaking, Mu Zixuan should be the queen. Why should Mu Zixuan be made the imperial concubine? Wu Yunhuan reacted quickly. She seemed to understand something, and then said, "You don't plan to establish a queen?" Lu Chen said, "Yes." After hearing Lu Chen's affirmative reply, Wu Yunhuan thought to herself, "Sure enough. This man didn't want a harem leader to appear in his harem." In other words, Lu Chen wanted him to be the harem leader himself. Of course, there are advantages to not having a queen. In this way, no one will compete for the queen's position. Lu Chen turned around at this time, hugged Wu Yunhuan's waist, and then lay down by the bathtub, letting Wu Yunhuan sit on his lap. "As my royal concubine, you can give me more children in the future. In addition, I know that the condition for you to become a heavenly being is to give me 3 children, so we must work harder in the future." Wu Yunhuan asked, "I'm very curious, how do you know the conditions for me to become a heavenly being?" Lu Chen guessed the conditions for becoming a heavenly being when he became a heavenly being. At that time, he was just guessing as Lu Chen, but today this guy said it with such certainty. Obviously, he does know the conditions for becoming a heavenly being. It stands to reason that only she knows the conditions for becoming a heavenly being. She has never told anyone the conditions for becoming a heavenly being. How does this guy know? Lu Chen smiled and said, "This is a man's secret." Seeing that Lu Chen was unwilling to say anything, Wu Yunhuan was too lazy to continue asking. Then the two of them soaked in the bathtub for a long time and talked about some things about Dao. End of chapter. Chapter 482 A Special Court Meeting. The appointment list of officials in Daxia's new court soon appeared in Daxia's official newspaper. Most of the officials in the capital were very satisfied with Lu Chen's arrangements. After all, they were not Lu Chen's team in the north. They were not liquidated when Lu Chen broke into the capital. It was good that they could still be reused now. Although some people's official positions were downgraded, they knew very well that although their official positions in the court that remained in the capital had not changed, they could not have real power in their hands. In the Yanqing court, although their official positions have been downgraded, they still have real power in their hands. An official position with real power is much better than an empty position in the capital to support the elderly. After the list of official appointments came out, Lu Chen immediately held a court meeting. At 4:30 in the morning, before dawn, many ministers had already arrived outside the council hall. Today is Lu Chen's first official court meeting since he ascended the throne, so the officials in the capital are quite active. When all the officials from the capital arrived, the meeting officially began. The officials saluted in unison and said, "Long live your Majesty." Long live your majesty! Lu Chen said calmly, sit down and sit down. Thank you, your majesty. Then the ministers came to both sides of the hall. On both sides of the hall, in front of each seat was a sign with the corresponding position written on it. After seeing this scene, the officials in the capital couldn't help but sigh. They didn't expect the new emperor to be so considerate of them. After being officials for so many years, this was the first time they heard that the court was held in this way. There were actually seats, and everyone had one. In the past, when they went to court, they would stand in the main hall for several hours, and their legs became weak. From this point, we can see the difference between the new emperor and the previous emperor. Indeed, as Li Rui said, the new emperor is different from any other emperor in this world. After all the ministers were seated, Lu Chen said directly, today is the first major court meeting after the reorganization of the imperial court. Before the meeting begins, I would like to remind the newly appointed ministers that after the meeting begins, they will only discuss political affairs. Having said this, Lu Chen looked at Zhuge Chongguang, who was sitting first under the dragon platform, and said, Grand Master, you can begin. Hearing this, everyone in the hall was stunned. Start? What to start with? At this time, Zhuge Chongguang said to the ministers in the hall, today's meeting will be presided over by me. Hearing Zhuge Chongguang's words, the officials from the capital were a little confused. What the hell, the court meetings are all presided over by the ministers, so what is the emperor doing on the sidelines? However, the officials who came from the capital soon discovered that the former ministers of the Northern Kingdom had no reaction at all. They seemed to think this was normal. It seemed that the Northern Kingdom had often done this before. Originally, some officials from the capital wanted to stand up and say something, but after remembering what Lu Chen said at the beginning, they would only talk about political affairs, so they had no choice but to sit in their seats. Zhuge Chongguang continued, today's meeting will mainly discuss the issue of sending troops. As soon as these words came out, the officials in the hall instantly became excited. Send out troops and use force. I didn't expect that the new emperor would plan to dominate the world so soon. This is a huge opportunity for everyone in the hall. As long as they perform well in this war, they will have a chance to be promoted. Both civil officials and military generals were very excited at the moment. Zhuge Chongguang continued, now there are two heavenly beings that can be mobilized by your majesty. Your majesty plans to send troops to attack Dahua first, and then let the heavenly beings go directly to Dahua Kyoto to put pressure on the Dahua royal family. In this way, you can use the shortest way to attack Dahua. Time will disintegrate the fighting wool of Dahu's army and destroy Dahua. After the existence of heavenly beings, the form of war is different. In the past, each major dynasty had a Grand Master, and regarded the Grand Master as a trump card, so it was difficult for anyone to destroy anyone. But heaven and humans are different. Dahua does not necessarily have heavenly beings. As long as there are no heavenly beings in Dahua, Lu Chen can randomly send a heavenly being to Dahu's Kyoto to directly eliminate all the great masters of Dahua and directly force Dahua to surrender. What's more, the combat effectiveness of Daxia's army is still so strong. After Dahu's soldiers saw Daxia's firearms, they were stunned. You will immediately lose your will to fight. Daxia adopted a two-front battle this time. On the one hand, it was a battle against Dahu's army, that is, the battle at the bottom. On the other hand, it was a battle against Dahu's royal family and dignitaries, and the battle at the top. If a normal war only targets the lower class, no matter how many people die at the bottom, the senior royal family members and the powerful people in Kyoto will not be heartbroken. They will only recruit more strong men and send them to the front line to die. The war at the bottom will last for a very long time. Until the bottom soldiers on both sides are almost exhausted, negotiations will slowly begin. But once the life safety of high-level officials is involved, the war will not last long. Under the auspices of Zhuge Chongguang, when the war would begin, the specific number of troops to be sent, and logistics arrangements were all discussed. At today's grand meeting, Zhuge Chongguang was presiding over the whole process. Lu Chen only said a few words, as if he was just here to watch the fun. This made Lu Chen seem like a puppet emperor who had been evacuated from power. Of course, Lu Chen was not a puppet emperor. When officials discussed issues, their eyes were always on Lu Chen. Although Zhuge Chongguang presided over the meeting, the officials knew very well who they were speaking to. This method of court meeting was still relatively new to the officials in the capital, but they quickly accepted it. By the time the meeting ended, it was already noon. Lu Chen sat on the dragon chair all morning and listened to people chattering all morning. He also felt a little tired. Although he only said a few words, it was quite tiring to listen to their discussion. After the court meeting, Lu Chen was about to go to the harem. A female guard hurriedly came to Lu Chen and said, "Your Majesty, Mrs. Qin is about to give birth." Upon hearing this, Lu Chen went directly to the palace where Qin Yue lived without saying a word. At this time, there were a lot of women outside the palace where Qin Yue lived. When they saw Lu Chen coming, the women quickly got out of the way. Lu Chen quickly entered Qin Yue's room. The room was filled with old midwives from the former Buwang Palace, and the maids who delivered babies were also the same people from before. When everyone saw Lu Chen, they immediately got out of the way, allowing Lu Chen to walk in front of Qin Yue. After seeing Lu Chen coming, Qin Yue was very moved. She thought that Lu Chen was busy recently and would not have time to see her. She did not expect that Lu Chen would still come before she gave birth to her child. Qin Yue lay on the bed and said feebly, "I pay homage to your Majesty. I forgive you for not being able to get up and salute your Majesty." Lu Chen smiled slightly, sat on the edge of the bed and said, "It doesn't matter, just lie down properly." At this time, Lu Chen held Qin Yue's hand and said, "Don't be nervous, the baby will be born soon." Qin Yue said, "With His Majesty here, I am not nervous." Qin Yue had long heard from Chu Yukan and the others that when Lu Chen's woman gave birth to a child, there would be almost no pain as long as Lu Chen was around. Qin Yue believed that Chu Yukan and the others would not lie to her. At this moment, Qin Yue suddenly felt a warm current entering her body, and the discomfort in her body disappeared instantly. Qin Yue was very surprised. As Chu Yukan and the others said, they really didn't feel any discomfort. Just when Qin Yue wanted to say thank you, she suddenly felt her stomach move. Before Qin Yue noticed what was going on, she felt as if something was missing from her body, and her stomach instantly became lighter. The next moment, the child's cry echoed in the hall. Qin Yue was stunned. Although she heard that giving birth would be easy with Lu Chen by her side, she never expected it to be so easy. Isn't this too simple? Just like that? Qin Yue carefully raised her body slightly and looked at her belly. She saw that one's belly was deflated, while the midwife and maids were busy scrubbing the baby's body. Only then did she believe that she had really given birth. Lu Chen continued to use his rejuvenating hands to help Qin Yue recover. After the midwives scrubbed the baby and hurriedly brought it to Lu Chen. "Congratulations, Your Majesty, you are a prince." Hearing the midwife's words, the happiest person was not Lu Chen, but Qin Yue. In this era, mother is more valuable than son. Although she did not expect her child to become a prince, with the prince, her future life was guaranteed, and Qin Yue was very happy. Chapter 483 Rewards from Qin Yue's Giving Birth. Lu Chen held the child, instilled some spiritual power into the child, checked the child's body, and then placed the child in front of Qin Yue. Qin Yue was able to sit up. She sat up and looked at the child next to her, with a smile on her face. After a moment, Qin Yue suddenly remembered that the child didn't have a name yet. She quickly turned to look at Lu Chen beside the bed. "Your Majesty, the child doesn't have a name yet. Please give him a name." Lu Chen thought for a while and then said, "Let's call him Lu Yuan." Qin Yue muttered, "Si Yuan. Si Yuan. Thank you, Your Majesty." Lu Chen smiled faintly and continued to instill spiritual power into Qin Yue and her son. After Qin Yue had completely recovered, Qin Yue suddenly thought that Lu Chen had been busy with a lot of things recently, and she quickly said, "Your Majesty, I have recovered. You still have things to do, so I won't waste Your Majesty's time." Lu Chen said, "Then you have a good rest." Qin Yue said and Lu Chen stood up, turned around and left the palace, heading to the royal study. He wanted to know what the system had rewarded him with this time. After entering the imperial study room, Lu Chen immediately opened the system interface. Congratulations to the host for obtaining an heir, and reward the 10,000 Immortals sect. If the host's descendants break through the 10, they will be rewarded with magical enlightenment and heaven-level skills such as the demon burial technique. Lu Chen was a little surprised when he saw the reward in front of him. He did not expect that in addition to power, the reward this time also included magical powers and heaven-level skills. This was the first time he had obtained magical powers. At this time, Lu Chen was curious about the role of the magical power initiation, so he immediately clicked on initiation. Enlightenment: the host's magical power can enlighten all things, allowing spiritual creatures to have the same wisdom as the host, and the host can instill its own knowledge into the enlightened object, and the enlightened object will be 100% loyal to the host. Seeing the introduction of this magical power, Lu Chen was stunned at first, but he soon became ecstatic. Ever since he traveled to this world, what troubled him the most was that it was difficult for people in this world to understand some of his ideas and practices. If you can use enlightenment to instill your knowledge into others, others will be able to understand what you say. Of course, enlightenment can play a greater role in the development of science and technology. It happened that he obtained the Earth Knowledge Library. Although he obtained a lot of knowledge on the Earth, in order for the craftsmen he raised to understand the books in the Earth Library, he still needed to teach them some basic knowledge himself. Now that he has the magical power of enlightenment, it is different. He can directly instill some of his basic knowledge into the people he trusts most, and then let those craftsmen study the knowledge contained in the books in the Earth Library. Some people with a gift for learning impart their knowledge to the people of this world. In this way, the world will soon be able to move from an agricultural world to industrialization. 100 years will definitely be enough, and it may not even take 100 years. Thinking of this, Lu Chen felt very excited. After reading about the magic power of enlightenment, Lu Chen clicked on the introduction of Demon Burial Technique. Demon Burial Technique, Heavenly Level Cultivation Technique, a righteous cultivation method. After practicing it, the aura on your body will specifically restrain the evil spirits and have a suppressive effect on evil cultivators. Seeing this technique, Lu Chen thought of the Taiyan sect. They had been looking for it for so long, but they still couldn't find any trace of the Taiyan sect. They didn't know where they were hiding or what evil they were hiding. If all his people have practiced the demon burial technique, when the Taiyan god sect comes out again, they won't have to be afraid of those guys who hide their heads and show their tails. This can be considered a useful technique at this stage. After looking at the magical powers and techniques, Lu Chen's eyes finally fell on the 3 words 10,000 Immortals Sect. Lu Chen had never heard of the name 10,000 Immortals Sect before, so he suspected that 10,000 Immortals Sect must be an overseas force like Luoyang Sword Sect and Taisha Temple. Lu Chen immediately clicked on the 10,000 Immortals Sect to view the detailed introduction. 10,000 Immortals Sect. Currently in a world of mist, there are 2 strong yin-yang mirror masters in the sect, 10 strong creation realm masters, and several heavenly beings. Because the ban on the mist world has not disappeared, people from the 10,000 Immortals Sect are temporarily unable to go to this world. The host can give an order. Lu Chen was stunned when he saw the system's introduction to the 10,000 Immortals Sect. The sect forces in the misty world? So giving yourself a reward now is of no use at all, right? He also hoped that the power of this reward would help him unify the world. Is it possible that from the system's perspective, there is no need for powerful men above heaven and man to unify several dynasties? Thinking of this, Lu Chen pondered for a moment. Judging from the current situation, if several major dynasties have no heavenly beings, or if there is only one heavenly being, then there is indeed no need for a strong person above heavenly beings to rule the world. Thinking of this, Lu Chen curiously asked the system, what is the realm above heaven and man, can you tell me in advance? Lu Chen wanted to see what the level of the 10,000 Immortals sect was outside, and whether the 10,000 Immortals sect could protect this world from being invaded by powerful people from other worlds after the restrictions in the Mist world disappeared. After Lu Chen finished speaking, the system prompt sounded. The realm of heaven and man, the realm of creation, the mirror of yin and yang, the realm of 10,000 laws, the realm of transformation into gods, the realm of returning to ruins, the realm of saints, and the realm of the great emperor. This. Lu Chen couldn't help but think that the realm of creation was just above heaven and humans, and the yin-yang mirror was one level higher than heaven and earth. So thinking about it this way, the strength of the 10,000 Immortals sect was not that great. I'm afraid that the 10,000 Immortals sect is just a small sect in the misty world. Just when Lu Chen was thinking this, the system beep sounded again. Each major realm is divided into 10 minor realms. After hearing the system's supplement, Lu Chen thought for a while. If there were 10 smaller realms, it would not be easy for people outside to cultivate to the yin and yang realm. I hope there won't be any strong people beyond the yin and yang realm in the mist world. Thinking of this, Lu Chen said to the system, let the master of the 10,000 Immortals sect investigate the situation in the mist world. Once the restrictions on the mist world disappear, he will immediately send people to this world and tell me the information about the mist world. The host's order has been issued, and Ji Hongwen, the leader of the 10,000 Immortals sect, has received the host's order. After giving the order to the 10,000 Immortals sect, Lu Chen sighed slightly, and it seemed that he would speed up the pace of unification. Lu Chen had long discovered the reward rules of the system. At this time, the system rewarded him with the sect forces in the misty world. In addition to showing that he did not need a strong man above heaven and man now, it also showed that he was likely to face it next. Those sect forces in the misty world. When the system distributes rewards, it will often distribute rewards that you may need next. Now that the system has rewarded me with the 10,000 Immortals sect, I have to quickly prepare to face the foggy world. At this moment, in the mist world, 10,000 Immortals sect. Fog enveloped the entire 10,000 Immortals sect, but there were some candle lights above the various buildings of the 10,000 Immortals sect. Within a few meters of the candle light, there was no thick fog. It is precisely because of these candle lights that the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect can see the road clearly. Today is the Wangxian sect's martial arts competition, and the main peak of the sect is already crowded with sect disciples. At this time, the senior officials of the 10,000 Immortals sect were watching the disciples competing in martial arts and discussing something. Suddenly, the leader of the 10,000 Immortals sect and several elders felt that there was something in their heads. The senior officials of the 10,000 Immortals sect stood up from their seats at the same time. Seeing this scene, the disciples of the 10,000 Immortals sect were stunned. They did not receive Lu Chen's instructions and did not understand why the sect master and the others suddenly stood up with very serious expressions. After a while, the sect leader Ji Hongwen slowly said, I never thought that we would be able to get out one day after being trapped in the mist world for thousands of years. God has eyes. The restrictions in the misty world are finally disappearing. At this time, Ji Hongwen was extremely excited, and even had some tears in his eyes. End of chapter. Chapter 484 Heavenly Beings arrive in Dao Kyoto. After Da Chao decided to destroy Dao, Daxia quickly published a declaration of war against Dao in the official newspaper. One stone stirred up 1,000 waves, and when the various forces in the major dynasties learned that Daxia was going to go to war against Dao, they were very excited. Some people are happy, some people are scared. Once Dao is destroyed, the forces within Daxia will definitely benefit, so the forces within Daxia are very excited. But the Dao dynasty is different. Once the country is destroyed, no one knows what their fate will be. At the same time, it was not just the people of the Dao dynasty who were panicked, Dayu and the people of the Daqian dynasty were also panicked. People have known about Lu Chen's ambition for a long time. When Lu Chen was not the emperor of Daxia, he exposed his ambition to dominate the world. Now that Lu Chen has mastered the resources of the entire Daxia, he will naturally start to realize his ambitions. Obviously, Daxia cannot be as simple as just destroying a Dao. Once Dao is destroyed, Dayu and Daqian will follow. Dao dynasty. In the courtroom. Today's court meeting was filled with dead silence. The hall was so quiet that even people's breathing could be heard. The atmosphere at the moment was dull and depressing, and sweat was pouring from the heads of some ministers. Emperor Wu sat on the dragon throne and looked at the ministers in the hall indifferently. After an unknown amount of time, Emperor Wu finally spoke, "My dear friends, have you read the declaration of war from the Northern Kingdom?" After hearing this question, the ministers in the hall still did not dare to say anything. Although they had long realized that Lu Chen would dominate the world and they would face this battle sooner or later, they did not expect that this battle would come so quickly. The most important point is that Daxia actually already has 4 heavenly beings, but Dao is not ready at all. Not to mention how powerful Daxia's army was, even without Daxia's army, just those 4 heavenly beings could directly destroy the entire Dao. Nowadays, their Dao does not have any powerful heavenly man, so they are no match for Daxia at all. Dao's ministers didn't know what to do. In the past, Dao had beaten others, but this was the first time they were beaten by others. Seeing the silent ministers in the hall, Emperor Wu was furious. They were all a bunch of trash. In the past, these ministers were chattering in the court, but now at the critical moment, no one spoke. Emperor Wu continued, "Soon Daxia will send troops to attack Dao. What can you do?" As soon as these words came out, there was still silence in the hall. "Ministers, you looked at me and I looked at you, but they didn't speak. Method? What else can be done?" They have known about Lu Chen's ambition for a long time. Lu Chen just wants to dominate the world. Now that others have issued a declaration of war, it means that they will not stop until Dawuju is destroyed. No matter what you say now, it's useless. Either Dao will use force to resist Daxia's attack, or he will surrender directly. However, judging from the strength of both sides, even if Dao really sends troops to resist Daxia's attack, he may not be able to hold on for long. Dawu had already seen the combat effectiveness of Daxia's new army, and the focus was not on Daxia's new army. What they paid most attention to was the heavenly beings of Daxia. No one knows whether Daxia will directly send heavenly beings to Kyoto. If a heavenly being comes to Kyoto, he might be able to directly destroy the entire Kyoto. If Daxia wants a quick victory, he will probably send heavenly beings directly to Kyoto. Now the ministers in the main hall are already thinking about how to join Daxia. They don't want to be buried with the Dao dynasty. This is a war with no chance of winning. But even if they already had the idea of surrendering in their hearts, they could not directly bring it up in front of Emperor Wu. Everyone knows what kind of person Emperor Wu is. It is impossible for Emperor Wu to surrender. If anyone proposes to surrender at this time, I am afraid that the person will be killed by Emperor Wu before he has finished speaking. Since there was no war, and the Emperor Wu could not agree to surrender, they simply said nothing. Seeing that the ministers still didn't speak, Emperor Wu's sharp gaze fell directly on the Minister of War, Chen Iking. "What do you think we should do next?" Hearing this, the Minister of War was so frightened that he knelt on the ground, trembling on the ground and said, "Your Majesty, the top priority is to gather a large army to resist the invasion of our country by Daxia's soldiers. Although he said so, the Minister of War also told Emperor Wu to listen. With Emperor Wu's character, Emperor Wu will definitely resist to the end. The Wu dynasty is about to be destroyed anyway, so it's okay to say nice things to Emperor Wu now. After hearing the words of the Minister of War, Emperor Wu was silent for a moment. He was not a fool. He also saw that no one in the civil and military dynasties really wanted to resist Daxia. After all, the strength of the heavenly beings is there, and the strength of the Great Master is simply not enough to resist the heavenly beings. What's more, their Dahu dynasty didn't have many great masters, not even a few great masters. How could they defeat the Daxia dynasty? Although Emperor Wu knew in his heart that Dahu was about to perish, Emperor Wu was very unwilling to do so. It is he, Emperor Wu, who should unify the world, not Emperor Xia, who should unify them. He cannot surrender. Even if he fights to the last moment, he must defend Dahu's kingdom. At this time, people suddenly felt a majestic pressure appearing in the hall, and some weak ministers were directly pressed to the ground by this pressure. Even Emperor Wu himself was unable to move under the pressure. This sudden pressure caused panic in the hall. After a while, two old men walked into the hall with dozens of powerful masters. Feeling the power of the warriors released from these people, all the civil and military officials in the dynasty were stunned. Many great masters. What kind of force is this? How come there are so many great masters? A minister who came to his senses quickly said, "Escort me. There is an assassin, please escort me." Just when people were preparing to protect Emperor Wu and leave here, a powerful pressure came again, and the imperial guards who originally entered the hall were suppressed and unable to move in an instant. People quickly figured out what was going on. God! It must be a heavenly being. The commander of the imperial guard was also a grand master, but he was so overwhelmed by the power that he could not move, which meant that some of the people who came were far more powerful than the grand master. Only heavenly beings have such pressure. When people think of heavenly beings, they immediately think of the heavenly beings of Daxia. Currently, the only ones that people know about are the heavenly beings of Daxia. At this time, Xia Yuan opened his mouth and said to Emperor Wu on the dragon throne, "According to the order of Emperor Xia, I came here to remind His Majesty Emperor Wu that if the Dahu royal family surrenders within 1 month, the royal family will survive. If you choose to resist, you bear the consequences at your own risk." Feeling the coercion from heaven and man, Emperor Wu felt very unwilling. He never thought that such a day would happen to him. Ever since he ascended the throne, he had used his strong stance to make others surrender, and today someone actually asked him to surrender. End of chapter. Chapter 485 Emperor Yu's suspicion. No matter how unwilling Emperor Wu was, there was nothing he could do in the face of absolute strength. Now in Dahu territory, there is no existence that can resist the heavenly beings. Let alone Dahu, the only ones in this world who can resist the heavenly beings are probably the heavenly beings. He had heard that Lu Xingqiu got the magic weapon that could kill heavenly beings from somewhere, but Lu Xingqiu had long since been wiped out, and the so-called magic weapon that could kill heavenly beings also fell into Lu Chen's hands. Superior. Emperor Wu clenched his fists at this time, and the strength of his hands directly made several holes in the dragon chair made of pure gold. Emperor Wu didn't speak at this time. His eyes were fixed on the dozen or so people in the hall. He knew that it was useless to say anything now, and maybe these guys could kill him directly here. He doesn't want to be the next Lu Xingqiu. Seeing Emperor Wu looking at him with anger on his face, Xia Yuan said calmly, "Emperor Xia has said that if the Dahu royal family surrenders, he is willing to marry Dahu's eldest princess and give her the status of an imperial concubine." After hearing this, Emperor Wu was stunned and seemed to understand something. Since Wu Yunwan went to the northern kingdom, although he still asked people to send some news back, it was all useless news. Wu Yunwan had not obtained the blueprints of the northern kingdom's weapons that he wanted. He had always thought that Wu Yunhuan did not gain Lu Chen's trust. In addition, there were more powerful people in the Northern Kingdom, so it was difficult to obtain the blueprints of the Northern Kingdom's weapons from Lu Chen. But after hearing that Lu Chen planned to marry Wu Yunhuan, Emperor Wu immediately realized that he was afraid that his daughter had already seen through the cake he had drawn for her, so she simply turned to Lu Chen. When he thought of this, Emperor Wu became even more angry. This unfilial daughter actually rebelled. But it is useless to say this now. At this moment, Emperor Wu suddenly thought of something, and then said coldly, "I can surrender to Daxia." Hearing this, all the civil and military officials in the court were stunned. They couldn't believe that these words came from Emperor Wu's mouth. What kind of person Emperor Wu was? They couldn't be more familiar. It stands to reason that Emperor Wu would rather die than surrender, and would not surrender until he died in battle. Just when people were confused about why Emperor Wu said such things, Emperor Wu continued, "However, Dao will only be a vassal state, and the land of Dao must still be ruled by me personally." After hearing this, the ministers instantly understood Emperor Wu's plan. Emperor Wu wanted to endure it. If he surrenders and still controls the land of Dao, then he may not only obtain the mysterious weapons of Daxia in the future, but he may also be able to continue to accumulate strength. One day, he will also be able to get the support of the powerful heavenly beings. As long as he finds other heavenly beings in this world and gets the support of those heavenly beings, he can get rid of Daxia's control as soon as possible and restore the Dao dynasty again. Xia Yuan naturally saw Emperor Wu's little thoughts. He smiled and said, "Your Majesty Emperor Wu, do you think our Majesty will agree to such a condition?" Emperor Wu said coldly, "If Emperor Xia is not willing, then we can meet on the battlefield. I would rather die than surrender." Hearing what Emperor Wu said, Xia Yuan was not angry. He said calmly, "There is still 1 month left, Emperor Wu can think about it again." Having said this, Xia Yuan turned around and walked directly out of the palace. Soon the pressure on the civil and military forces of the Manchu dynasty dissipated. When the pressure disappeared, the ministers breathed heavily, thankful that the heavenly being did not take action just now. If he had, I am afraid that no one present would survive. After the ministers came to their senses, they all turned to look at Emperor Wu. At this time, they saw Emperor Wu with a gloomy face and no words. After a while, Emperor Wu raised his hand and slapped the armrests of his dragon chair directly. The pure gold armrests on both sides of the dragon chair were instantly shattered. Emperor Wu didn't say much. He stood up directly, flicked his sleeves, and left the hall. After Emperor Wu left, the ministers in the hall began to talk about it. Half a month later, Daiyu, the Empress's palace. Wearing a red dress and a phoenix crown, Emperor Yu stood in front of the window, looking at the letter in his hand, his face extremely cold. At this moment, the letter burst into flames and quickly burned to ashes. After she learned that Wu Yunhuan might have become Lu Chen's woman, she wrote a letter directly to Wu Yunhuan and asked in the letter whether Wu Yunhuan had become Lu Chen's woman. Originally, Emperor Yu still had some hope, hoping to get a negative answer. But unexpectedly, after receiving his letter, Wu Yunhuan simply stopped hiding it and directly admitted it in his reply. And she also said in the letter that she was not under coercion, she voluntarily became Lu Chen's woman, which made Emperor Yu even more angry. How could Wu Yunhuan voluntarily become that man's woman? When she was in the mystical immortal sect, many outstanding immortal cultivators pursued her, but Wu Yunhuan rejected them all. Although Lu Chen was somewhat capable, it was nothing to those powerful men in the misty world, and Lu Chen was so much younger than her. How could Wu Yunhuan like him? Emperor Yu frowned slightly and fell into deep thought. She felt that Wu Yunhuan must have concealed other things about herself. She didn't believe that Wu Yunhuan would just marry Lu Chen. Thinking of this, Emperor Yu came to the desk again, then picked up his pen and wrote another letter to Wu Yunhuan. She now wonders whether Wu Yunhuan realized that Lu Chen was difficult to deal with, so she deliberately committed herself to Lu Chen, hoping to find a way to get rid of Lu Chen. Soon, she wrote another letter and had it sent to Yancheng. At this moment, Daxia, Yancheng. In Murong Schwetter's room, Lu Chen sat in front of the desk, looked at the portrait on the table, and said with a smile, "I have to say, your painting skills are really high, and you are worthy of being a talented girl from Dayu." Hearing Lu Chen's compliment, Murong Schwetter said lightly, "It's just painting casually." Lu Chen looked at the painting in front of him seriously and said while admiring it, "You are not just painting casually. There are so many details in the painting. You can tell that you already know my body well." Murong Schwetter glanced at Lu Chen speechlessly, and then said, "Your Majesty came to my room just to see my paintings." Lu Chen smiled slightly, slowly rolled up his portrait, and said while rolling it up, "That's not true. I just remembered that I haven't practiced calligraphy for a long time, so I wanted to practice calligraphy with you." Hearing the calligraphy practice, Murong Schwetter recalled the things she and Lu Chen had done in the study room of Buwang Mansion. Murong Schwetter finally understood that Lu Chen had been idle recently and wanted to torture herself for fun. She also heard that the power structure of Daxia today is very special. Lu Chen didn't even care about the court meetings and left them to other people's hosts. At most, this guy only browsed some important official documents. Other than that, he had almost nothing to do. At this time, Murong Schwetter ran directly to the bed and lay down, and then said, "Come on." Seeing this scene, Lu Chen was stunned for a moment, and then said, "Who do you think I am?" Murong Schwetter laughed in her heart. This lecher was pretending to be a serious person. Just as Murong Schwetter was about to say something, Lu Chen transformed and appeared behind Murong Schwetter in an instant, followed by the familiar scene of calligraphy practice. End of chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 486. Are you writing to your good sister again? Lu Chen raised the brush and wrote lightly on the jade white skin. His expression at the moment looked very serious, as if he was putting all his energy into writing. Murong Schwetter exhaled like blue at this time, and her eyes were misty. After a while, Murong Schwetter asked, "Your Majesty, why did you come to me today?" Lu Chen said while writing, "Of course something happened, that's what we are doing now." After hearing this, Murong Schwetter looked at Lu Chen with his head down and writing seriously. Although Lu Chen occasionally wanted to pamper her, she didn't think that Lu Chen came to her today just to have sex with her. Of joy. After a while, Lu Chen finally said, "I heard that Dayu has dismissed you from your post as minister to Daxia and asked you to return to Dayu to report on your duties." Hearing this, Murong Schwetter said, "Your Majesty is really well informed. Your Majesty already knew about it before I had time to tell him." Sure enough, as Murong Schwetter thought, this guy came today because of this matter. Murong Schwetter continued, "Now that I am no longer Dayu's minister, and I cannot deliver more false news to Dayu, I am no longer of use to His Majesty. Does your Majesty intend to abandon me?" Murong Schwetter's words were very calm, as if she had already been prepared to be abandoned by Lu Chen. Hearing Murong Schwetter's words, Lu Chen smiled faintly, and then said, "After following me for so long, you know very well that I am not such a person. And you are not useless to me." When Murong Schwetter said this, Lu Chen put the pen in his hand aside, then twisted his waist slightly. Murong Schwetter let out a cry. Lu Chen raised his hand and waved. The bookshelf in Murong Schwetter's room was a can of red paint flew next to Murong Schwetter's body. Lu Chen raised his hand at this time, and a brush that had not been stained with ink flew into Lu Chen's hand. Lu Chen gently stroked the curse mark on Murong Schwetter's lower abdomen with one hand, and said at the same time, "Throw away this curse mark. Putting aside its function, this curse pattern is quite beautiful." Feeling Lu Chen's warm hands, Murong Schwetter's body suddenly trembled. Lu Chen picked up the brush, dipped it in red paint, and then continued to fill in the dimmed curse lines on Murong Schwetter's lower abdomen. After a while, Lu Chen spoke again, "When you became my woman, I told you directly that for me, your biggest role is to be my woman and give me children. As for you to deliver false news to the Great Xia Dynasty, these are nothing to me." Hearing this, Murong Schwetter was slightly stunned. Lu Chen had indeed said such words before, but in her opinion, it was just a man's rhetoric. Lu Chen continued, "I believe you already know very well in your heart that what I value is your body." Hearing this, Murong Schwetter snorted and said, "Your Majesty really doesn't hide himself at all." Lu Chen smiled and said, "What's there to hide? It's normal for men to be lustful. If you feel that you don't feel safe in Daxia, why not give me a few children as soon as possible? There are many women in the palace who don't feel safe at first. After having children, they quickly feel at ease." Lu Chen originally felt that his women's idea of mother is more valuable than child was too backward, but then he thought that if they had children, it would make them feel at ease, which would be a good idea. A great way to enhance your feelings. Gradually, Lu Chen no longer thought there was anything wrong with this kind of thinking. Hearing Lu Chen's words, Murong Schwetter took a deep breath and tried to stay calm and said, "Princess Wu Chong said that your Majesty is very firm in the idea of reproducing future generations." Lu Chen smiled and continued painting without saying anything else. After finishing the painting, he still had business to do. I don't know how long it took. Outside Murong Schwetter's bedroom, Wu Yunwan was drinking tea in the pavilion. When she heard the faint sound coming from the palace, she couldn't help snorting. A good emperor, but he did not do serious things in broad daylight and went to a woman's palace to do bad things. He was really a foolish emperor. I'm afraid that even if this guy unifies the entire world, Daxia will be defeated by this guy sooner or later. At this time, a female guard entered the courtyard and said to Wu Yunwan, "Mrs. Wu, this is a letter from Dayu." Hearing this, Wu Yunwan immediately raised her jade hand. The next moment, the letter in the guard's hand flew to her hand. She opened the letter and read the contents carefully. Then she said to the maid, "Go get pen and paper." After seeing the letter written by Emperor Yu to her, Wu Yunwan decided to show off her cards directly to Emperor Yu. She also saw from Emperor Yu's letter that Emperor Yu did not believe that she had become Lu Chen's woman, but instead believed that she had become Lu Chen's woman. She was lurking beside Lu Chen, trying to achieve some purpose. If Emperor Yu continues to misunderstand like this, Emperor Yu's hatred for Lu Chen will not weaken. In the end, Wu Yunwan didn't want to see a life and death situation between Lu Chen and Emperor Yu, so she planned to hint that the conditions for Emperor Yu to become a heavenly being were related to Lu Chen, which might reduce some of Emperor Yu's hostility towards Lu Chen. While Wu Yunwan was writing the letter, the noise in Murong Schwetter's palace became louder and louder, making Wu Yunwan unable to calm down. Wu Yunwan scolded coldly, "What a couple!" Wu Yunwan then used her spiritual power to seal her ears, so that she could calm down. I don't know how long it took before Lu Chen came out of Murong Schwetter's room and saw Wu Yunwan sitting in the pavilion. Lu Chen immediately came behind Wu Yunwan. After feeling that the bad guy Lu Chen came out, Wu Yunwan immediately recovered her hearing. She then said coldly, "Don't you want to rule the world? Is it possible that your Majesty thinks that you can rule the world by lying on women every day?" Hearing this, Lu Chen was not angry, but directly picked her up and let her sit on his lap. The beauty of the country, I love both the country and the beauty. Humans are not machines. When they are tired from work, they naturally need to rest. Having said this, Lu Chen glanced at the letter Wu Yunwan was writing on the stone table. "Are you writing another letter to your good sister? I thought you guys had broken up a long time ago." Wu Yunwan said, "The relationship between me and her is not so easy to break off. They entered the mist world together and experienced many life and death crises. They helped each other and finally survived and returned to this world from the mist world. How could they completely break up because of a man? Even if Emperor Yu doesn't accept Lu Chen in the end, Wu Yunwan will not break up with her. End of chapter. Chapter 487. How about this, I'll write her a letter too. Hearing Wu Yunwan's words, Lu Chen smiled slightly and said in her ear, you guys really have a deep love for each other as sisters. At this point, Lu Chen suddenly thought of something, and then said, how about this, I will also write her a letter, and then you can ask your people to bring it to her. Wu Yunwan frowned, what letter do you want to write? Are you planning to persuade her to surrender in the letter? She is not a woman who surrenders so easily. Emperor Yu was able to gain a firm foothold in the Great Xia Dynasty because she was not an ordinary woman, and her character was tougher than most men. Lu Chen smiled and said, I'm not so naive. I wrote to her mainly to give her a preliminary understanding of who I am. Wu Yunwan turned her head slightly, looked at Lu Chen holding her with the corner of her eyes, and then asked, do you know me? What do you know about you? Know that you're a womanizer. Wu Yunwan thought in her mind that if Emperor Yu knew that this lecherous man was pressing her down and humiliating her from time to time, she would probably have a worse impression of Lu Chen and become even more resentful towards him. When the two of them meet, Emperor Yu may want to kill this lecher at all costs. Wu Yunwan didn't want Lu Chen to write a letter to irritate Emperor Yu. Lu Chen also saw through Wu Yunwan's thoughts, so he continued, don't worry, I won't write anything that may irritate her. Wu Yunwan said, after you finish writing, show it to me. Lu Chen said, you don't have to read it after you finish writing it. You can just watch me write it. Having said this, Lu Chen waved his hand, and a pen flew out from Murong Xue's room and flew into Lu Chen's hand. Then Lu Chen put his hands through Wu Yunwan's armpits and hugged Wu Yunwan, writing a letter on the stone table. It is indeed inconvenient to write in this posture, but in this way, Wu Yunwan can also see what she has written. Although Wu Yunwan felt a little uncomfortable in her buttocks, she didn't say anything more. She wanted to see what this guy could write. After Lu Chen wrote the letter, he first identified himself in the letter, introduced himself, and then told Emperor Yu the reason why he wrote the letter. Then, Lu Chen mentioned in the letter why he unified the world. He mentioned in the letter that the ban on the mist world was about to disappear, and told Emperor Yu that the world was not safe, very fragile, and could be destroyed at any time, so he unified the world in order to cope with the possibility of coming prepare for crises. As for Wu Yunwan is the woman he loves deeply, and he will not let Wu Yunwan be wronged. Seeing that Lu Chen actually mentioned herself in the letter, Wu Yunwan quickly interrupted and said, wait a minute, you can't mention my name in your letter. Lu Chen asked, why not? Wu Yunwan said, didn't you just say that you wouldn't write something that would irritate her? As long as my name appears in your letter, it may make her angry. After hearing what Wu Yunwan said, Lu Chen said with a smile, I understand, Emperor Yu is a very possessive person. If I mentioned your name, she would definitely think that I was provoking her, right? Wu Yunwan said calmly, as long as you understand, you can make another copy later and remember to remove this part. Lu Chen said forcefully, this is not okay. I am showing my attitude. This part must be added. Wu Yunwan was stunned for a moment, a trace of anger flashed across her face, and she seemed to understand something. He didn't let this guy write this part. He insisted on writing it because he just wanted to see Emperor Yu get angry. In other words, he just wanted to see Emperor Yu get jealous because of him. Wu Yunwan said, if you are not afraid of angering her, just write it. Wu Yunwan didn't bother to care about this guy anymore. Anyway, she no longer had the ability to counter Lu Chen. Lu Chen could do whatever he wanted. Lu Chen smiled faintly, didn't say anything more, and continued to write, writing a lot about the world in the letter. Until the end of the letter, he did not mention anything about asking Emperor Yu to surrender. Of course, this is only on the surface. Lu Chen mentioned the restrictions in the mist world, and also said that he was doing it for this world. This was putting pressure on Emperor Yu from the moral high ground. He seemed to be saying that if Emperor Yu does not cooperate with the unification, he will not cooperate. After integrating the resources of this world, Daiyou will definitely be the first dynasty to be impacted after the restrictions in the foggy world disappear. If anything happens to Daiyou, she, as the Emperor of Yu, will bear the responsibility. After Lu Chen finished writing the letter to Emperor Yu, he glanced at the letter written by Wu Yunhuan next to him. "Madam, what did you write in the letter? Why don't you show it to me?" Hearing this, Wu Yunhuan said lightly, "Why, are you afraid that I will tell Emperor Yu some of Daxia's secrets?" Lu Chen said, "That's not true, I'm just curious. If you don't want to show it to me, then I won't read it. Since you don't want to read it, I'll put it in the envelope." After Wu Yunhuan finished speaking, she put her letter into an envelope and sealed it with wax. Immediately afterwards, Wu Yunhuan sealed Lu Chen's letter in wax. Wu Yunhuan stuffed the envelope, wrote her name on the envelope, then called the maid and asked the maid to deliver the letter to Daiyu's spies lurking in Yanchange. After the letter was sent away, Lu Chen did not get up immediately. He still hugged Wu Yunhuan's soft body. Wu Yunhuan said expressionlessly, "Your Majesty is busy with affairs, so I won't waste your Majesty's time." Lu Chen smiled and said, "Are you planning to drive me away?" Wu Yunhuan said calmly, "This is your Majesty's harem. Your Majesty can stay as long as you want." Lu Chen changed the subject and said, "Speaking of which, now that Daxia has declared war on Dao, your current status can be regarded as the princess of the enemy country." Wu Yunhuan was slightly startled. What did Lu Chen mean? Just when Wu Yunhuan was confused about what Lu Chen meant by this, Lu Chen suddenly stood up and directly hugged Wu Yunhuan into a princess hug. Then he transformed and appeared in Wu Yunhuan's room in an instant. Immediately afterwards, Lu Chen threw Wu Yunhuan directly on the soft couch. Wu Yunhuan was stunned for a moment, and soon she realized that this guy was not having fun next door just now, and now he was looking for her to do bad things. Wu Yunhuan secretly cursed Murong Shui in her heart. Why was that maid so useless? She didn't even serve Lu Chen well, so she would suffer as well. Lu Chen looked at Wu Yunhuan on the soft couch and said, "You are an enemy princess, and now you are in my hands. What do you think I should do with you? Disposal?" Wu Yunhuan looked at Lu Chen's handsome face and instantly understood what Lu Chen meant. What this little man likes most is to create some fake scenes and get his woman to play some roles. She was a real princess herself, but she fell into the hands of Lu Chen, a lecherous enemy emperor, and she was so beautiful, so naturally she would not end well. Wu Yunhuan then asked, "What does your Majesty plan to do with me?" Lu Chen stretched out his hand, lifted Wu Yunhuan's chin, looked into her phoenix eyes, and said with a smile, "You are quite arrogant. You still call yourself me at this time. I am a foolish king. I met such a beautiful woman like you. What do you think I should do?" Although Wu Yunhuan felt awkward in her heart, she still planned to continue acting, and then said, "I am the eldest princess of Dao. If your Majesty does something bad to me, Emperor Wu will definitely not let you go." However, as soon as Wu Yunhuan finished speaking, Lu Chen leaned down, pressed Wu Yunhuan's soft body, and looked down at her beautiful face. "Then I want to see, I have insulted you. What can Emperor Wu do?" Just as Wu Yunhuan was about to speak, Lu Chen kissed Wu Yunhuan's red lips directly. "Ahoy!" Wu Yunhuan continued to struggle, and her struggle was very large, and it seemed as if she was really resisting. However, she was soon troubled by Lu Chen, the emperor of the enemy country. End of chapter. Chapter 488. Wu Yunhuan is pregnant. In the antique palace, there are countless calligraphy and paintings hanging, and there are also many calligraphy and paintings on the floor. The whole room is full of poetry and calligraphy, and looks extremely elegant. However, on the bed in such a room, there was a fair-haired woman lying on her bed. The woman was lying on the bed, as if she was asleep. At this moment, a faint sound came from next door. Although the sound was very small, you could still hear it if you listened carefully. Murong Shuer woke up instantly. She sat up from the bed and glanced at her body with her beautiful eyes. When she saw the words left by Lu Chen on her body, Murong Shuer sighed slightly. As expected, I can no longer live without that man. Soon Murong Shuer calmed down her inner emotions again, and she listened carefully to the sounds coming from next door. After a while, Murong Shuer couldn't help but chuckle. The eldest princess of Dao, wasn't she noble and dignified on weekdays? Why did she become like that after falling into the hands of that man? All she could do was cry and scream. When she thought of Wu Yunwan, that noble and beautiful woman, being ravaged by Lu Chen, Murong Shuer felt a sense of pleasure in her heart. She knew very well that when Lu Chen was in her room just now, Wu Yunwan outside must have been listening to the goings-on in the room as if she were watching a show. Wu Yunwan didn't know what she was thinking about herself outside before, but now it's her turn. At dusk, in Wu Junwan's palace, Wu Yunwan originally thought that Lu Chen had just come out of Murong Shuer's room. Even if he saw that she wanted to do harm to her on a whim, he probably wouldn't stay in her room for long. As a result, this guy entered her bedroom and stayed here all afternoon, and she found that this guy seemed to be particularly excited today. I don't know if it was because of her identity as the princess of an enemy country that stimulated Lu Chen and made him become particularly violent. After night fell, a full moon hung in the sky. At this time, the cold moonlight turned over the windowsill and shone into the house, shining on Wu Yunwan's fair skin. Wu Yunwan was lying on Lu Chen's chest, and Lu Chen put his arms around Wu Yunwan's waist and held her hips with his big hands. Lu Chen said with a smile, "The princess of the enemy country is really different." Hearing this, Wu Yunwan snorted weakly, "You are really a tyrant." Lu Chen said calmly, "Tyrant? There are many tyrants in this world, as long as they are not stupid kings." Wu Yunwan said, "Your Majesty lies on women all day long, and sooner or later he will become a coward." Lu Chen smiled slightly, "By the time I become the Hun Jun, maybe my throne will have been passed on to my son." Hearing Lu Chen's answer, Wu Yunwan didn't believe it. She said, "Are you willing to give up the power in your hands?" Lu Chen said, "I didn't say that I would give up the power in my hands. When the time comes, I will be the supreme emperor and just do nothing." Wu Yunwan said, "Since ancient times, those who become the supreme emperor will eventually be completely ignored by their own sons." Lu Chen said with a smile, "Then it depends on whether my son has this ability." "Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. Let's continue to do our own things." Having said this, Lu Chen put his arms around Wu Yunwan's waist and turned over, pressing her under him again. Wu Yunwan looked at Lu Chen speechlessly. This little man would definitely be a foolish king in the future. Lu Chen ignored Wu Yunwan's eyes. He continued to lean down and kissed Wu Yunwan's soft red lips again. Another night passed. In the early morning, the warm sunshine shone on Lu Chen. After Lu Chen woke up, he gently fiddled with Wu Yunwan's messy hair. Just as Lu Chen was arranging Wu Yunwan's hair, he suddenly saw a system prompting an exclamation mark next to his line of sight. Lu Chen seemed to have thought of something and quickly opened the system prompt panel. He was too involved last night and didn't look at the system panel at all. Only now did he realize that Wu Yunwan had been tricked. The host and his wife cultivate a relationship once, and the experience value of the qi refining art will be increased. The experience value of the demon burial art will be increased. Congratulations to the host for helping his wife and concubine Wu Yunwan become pregnant, and being rewarded with the Pulse Protection 7 killing formation. Lu Chen was stunned for a moment. Wu Yunwan was already a pseudo-celestial being after all. In addition, Wu Yunwan's condition for becoming a heavenly being was to give him 3 children, so Lu Chen always thought that this condition was very harsh. It was difficult for Wu Yunwan to conceive her own child. Unexpectedly, Wu Yunwan would become pregnant with her own child so quickly. Then Lu Chen clicked on the Pulse Protection 7 killing formation to see what use this formation had. Pulse Protecting 7 kill formation. Once the Earth-level formation is successfully constructed, the host's wife and children can activate it. It can withstand the attacks of powerful men in the realm of all realms and will not cause harm to the host's wife and children. After seeing the effect of the formation, Lu Chen was very happy. This formation was of great use to him. At this time, Lu Chen felt Wu Yunwan twist slightly in his arms, and then he looked down at Wu Yunwan's beautiful face. The corners of Lu Chen's mouth couldn't help but raise slightly, revealing a smile. At this moment, Wu Yunwan's eyelashes twitched slightly, and soon Wu Yunwan opened her eyes. The first time she opened her eyes, Wu Yunwan saw Lu Chen staring at her with a smirk on his face. Wu Yunwan was stunned for a moment, and her delicate body trembled slightly. "Why are you laughing?" Lu Chen smiled and said, "I'll tell you some good news." Wu Yunwan asked curiously, "What's the good news?" Lu Chen said mysteriously, "You have to be mentally prepared." Hearing this, Wu Yunwan looked at Lu Chen suspiciously. "Go ahead." Lu Chen said directly, "You are pregnant." After Lu Chen finished speaking, Wu Yunwan was stunned again. Pregnant? Real or fake? She has lived with Lu Chen's wives and concubines for so long, and she has long heard about some of Lu Chen's abilities, such as Lu Chen's ability to sense whether they are pregnant at the first opportunity. So when Lu Chen said they were pregnant, they were definitely pregnant, but it would take some time before they showed signs of pregnancy. Although she knew that Lu Chen was probably telling the truth, Wu Yunwan still couldn't believe it. After all, she was a pseudo-celestial being. Let alone a pseudo-celestial being, even a great master would find it difficult to get pregnant. Unexpectedly, I had just followed Lu Chen for a short time and already ruined this guy's skills. If she were to get pregnant at this rate, wouldn't she be able to become a celestial being before she was 50? Not to mention the age of 50, it is not impossible to become a heavenly being even before the age of 40. At this time, Wu Yunwan's emotions were a little complicated. Although she also wanted to break through and become a heavenly being, she felt strange when she thought that she was pregnant with the seed of this bad thing. She, a powerful princess, finally fell into the hands of the enemy emperor. After coming back to her senses, Wu Yunwan asked with certainty, "Is what you said true?" Lu Chen smiled and said, "You will know if what I said is true in a month." At this point, Lu Chen touched his waist and said, "I have said before that I will get you pregnant sooner or later, and I have kept my promise." Wu Yunwan fell into silence and did not speak. Seeing that Wu Yunwan seemed to be thinking about something, Lu Chen asked, "What? You still don't believe it?" Wu Yunwan said expressionlessly, "I believe it." Lu Chen continued to ask, "Are you unhappy?" Wu Yunwan continued, "No." Lu Chen said, "Then why do you look so depressed?" Wu Yunwan fell into silence again. End of chapter. Chapter 489 Canonization. Regarding the matter of giving birth to a child, Wu Yunwan was quite conflicted. On the one hand, she wanted to complete the test of heaven and man as soon as possible. 69 shux. Com. On the other hand, she was worried that her child would suffer some bullying after birth. Once the Dahu dynasty is destroyed, she will be a subjugated princess. The child of a subjugated princess will not be reused in the future. At this time, Lu Chen also saw Wu Yunwan's inner worries. He gently touched Wu Yunwan's jade back and said, "You are worried that our children will be unfairly treated because of your identity when they grow up." Treatment. Wu Yunwan still didn't speak, but Lu Chen had already seen her answer from the expression on her face. Lu Chen immediately said, "You don't have to worry about this at all. I treat all my children equally, and I won't do it because of their mother. Their status will alleviate their treatment." Of course, this is only during the period when they are growing up. When they grow up, it will be up to them to work hard on what kind of life they want to live. As a father, I don't want to see my children grow up to eat and die. After hearing what Lu Chen said, Wu Yunwan felt a little less entangled. She also figured out that she didn't need to care so much about other people's opinions. If the world really couldn't tolerate her and her threesome by then, she just took her 3 children and left this world. Anyway, Lu Chen also said that the restrictions in the foggy world were about to disappear, and sooner or later they would be able to leave this world. At this time, Lu Chen twisted slightly, then kissed Wu Yunwan's red lips, kissing her heartily. After a while, Lu Chen's mouth slowly separated from her red lips. At this time, Wu Yunwan said, "I hope what your majesty said is true." Lu Chen smiled and said, "I am the emperor after all, so of course I keep my word." After the words fell, Lu Chen got up from the bed, then a princess hugged Wu Yunwan and walked directly to the bath next to the palace. After Lu Chen finished bathing, Lu Chen left Wu Yunwan's palace and went to the imperial study to handle government affairs. When Lu Chen arrived at the imperial study, Zhuge Chongguang and other ministers were already waiting at the entrance of the imperial study. Among the ministers who came today, they were basically military generals, that is, officials in the military system. Only Zhuge Chongguang and Situ Ce were civil servants. After Lu Chen glanced at the ministers, he entered the royal study directly, and the ministers immediately followed behind. After entering the royal study, the ministers all said in unison, "Greetings to your majesty, long live your majesty." Lu Chen nodded slightly, and then said, "Ping Shen." Immediately afterwards, Lu Chen asked someone to bring the map and put together a large table with several tables in the middle of the royal study. Then all the generals gathered around the big table and looked at the map placed in the middle of the big table. Lu Chen asked, "I believe all of you dear friends already know what happened. The deadline I gave Dao is coming soon. Dao has no intention of surrendering. This battle is inevitable. In order to completely destroy the fighting will of Dahu's soldiers, Daxia must use the power of thunder to completely destroy Dahu's main army." After hearing what Lu Chen said, one of the generals asked, "Your Majesty, I heard that your Majesty has already sent heavenly beings to the capital of Emperor Dahu to intimidate Dahu. Since heavenly beings can easily deal with Dahu's royal family members, why don't we simply capture them? The thief captures the king first, and as long as he captures Emperor Wu, Dahu's army will naturally collapse." Hearing this, Lu Chen smiled faintly, and then looked at Zhuge Chongguang, "Master Zhuge, tell me why I didn't let the gods directly destroy the capital of Dahu." Zhuge Chongguang said, "Because once the imperial capital is broken, the entire Dahu will completely lose order. Some unwilling Dahu vassal kings are likely to raise troops at this time. In this way, Daxia will have to deal with those who are everywhere. The vassal kings everywhere in Dahu. But if we can let Dahu's soldiers know the terror of Daxia's army through war, then even if some vassal kings have other ideas, it will be difficult for their soldiers to have the will to fight, and they will force Emperor Wu to lead Dahu to surrender. It saves more time than slowly wiping out the feudal Lord Dahu." Upon hearing Zhuge Chongguang's answer, the generals in the imperial study instantly understood Lu Chen's plan. In the beginning, the heavenly beings were asked to intimidate Emperor Wu, but Emperor Wu was not frightened. Since Emperor Wu still had some luck, let's completely destroy his hope. Once Dahu's army collapsed, when Daxia's army came to Dahu's imperial capital, Dahu would have to surrender if he didn't want to. Of course, Lu Chen also had another biggest purpose in letting Daxia's soldiers take the lead in launching the attack, and that was actual combat experience. Although there are many heavenly beings around him now, it seems that Daxia's army is of no use anymore, but when he thinks of the possible enemies in the misty world, Lu Chen thinks that the army will still play a big role in the future. The most important thing is that Lu Chen now feels more and more that a crisis is coming. especially the appearance of the two rewards of 10,000 Immortals Sect and Pulse Guard 7 Killing Formation. After the Pulse Protection 7 Killing Formation is deployed, it can withstand the strong men of the 10,000 Dharma realm. Does that mean that one day in the future, strong men of the 10,000 Dharma realm will appear in this world and come to attack them? He doesn't think the system will reward him casually. In order to cope with what may happen next, Daxia's army must have actual combat experience and cannot just let the gods do everything. Lu Chen said at this time, Master Zhuge is right. I naturally know that the gods can easily destroy the Dahu royal family, but destroying the Dahu royal family does not mean destroying Dahu. Once the Dahu royal family is destroyed, other Dahu feudal lords will most likely want to replace them. Moreover, the most important purpose of letting Daxia's army participate in the battle this time is to train troops. Daxia's millions of troops cannot just be placed there and do nothing. Hearing Lu Chen's words, the generals immediately understood what Lu Chen meant. It seemed that the emperor wanted to sharpen the sword of the army. Lu Chen said, "Okay, let's not discuss this matter for now. Next, we will discuss the direction of the attack and strive to completely destroy the fighting will of Dahu's soldiers in the first round of all-out attack." Then everyone's eyes fell on the map, and they began to discuss the direction of attack. Their troops have already been mobilized to the front line. Once the offensive route is established, Daxia will soon be able to launch a full-scale attack on Dahu. After their discussion, 3 lines of attack were finally established, and these 3 lines of attack corresponded to the territories ruled by the feudal kings who were bound to have strong military strength among the great warriors. After the military meeting in the royal study room ended, Lu Chen had a simple bite to eat, and then began to write the imperial edict. For an entire afternoon, Lu Chen spent most of the afternoon writing the imperial edict. These imperial edicts are all for his wives and concubines, who are named emperors and concubines who are named imperial concubines. In the evening, Chu Yukin was talking to Mu Zixuan in Fenjiun Palace when suddenly several female guards entered the courtyard. Seeing those female guards, Chu Yukin and Mu Zixuan had not yet reacted. Chu Yukin was arranging the security work in the inner courtyard of the palace. Chu Yukin also knew these female guards. They had no arrangements today. Work, and they are directly under Bai Qingqing. Now Bai Qingqing no longer belongs to Chu Yukin. Bai Qingqing and Bai Qingqing's female guards belong directly to Lu Chen. Just when several women were wondering why so many female guards appeared all of a sudden, a female guard took out the imperial edict and said, "Madams, I have an edict." Upon hearing this, they reacted instantly, and then they all knelt down in unison. A female guard picked up the imperial edict and began to read, "By God's blessing, the emperor decreed that Mu Zixuan is gentle and virtuous, with both ability and political integrity. She is hereby canonized as the imperial concubine." Lu Chen wrote an imperial edict for each of his wives and concubines, so the female guards read the imperial edict for a long time. Chapter 490 The War to Destroy the Country begins. After the female guard finished reading the canonization of Mu Zixuan and Chu Yukin, she did not leave immediately. She took out another imperial edict and said to Mu Zixuan, "Concubine Mu, is His Highness here? He also has a copy. Imperial decree." Hearing this, Mu Zixuan seemed to understand something, and quickly said to the maid next to her, "Xiao, go and bring Feng'er." The maid quickly got up and went directly to Fenjiun Palace, quickly bringing Lu Chongfeng over. Immediately afterwards, the female guard issued an imperial edict to confer Lu Chongfeng as the crown prince. It wasn't until all the imperial edicts were read out that Mu Zixuan, Chu Yukin and the others began to kowtow to express gratitude. After Mu Zixuan and Chu Yukin stood up, the female guard who issued the imperial edict said, "Concubine Mu, Concubine Chu, and I have to go to the other ladies to issue the edict, so I will leave first." Mu Zixuan said quickly, "Well, you go ahead." The female guard said, "My slave, please leave." Then the female guards left Fenjiun Palace. Seeing their leaving figures, Mu Zixuan, Chu Yukan, and De Zhou Xiaozhou all fell into silence for a long time. The identities of them and Lu Chen were finally settled, but for some reason, they were very calm at the moment and seemed not to be excited at all. Maybe it was because they had already established a relationship with Lu Chen and already knew what kind of identity Lu Chen would give them, so they didn't feel particularly excited. Soon, Lu Chen's other wives and concubines also received the imperial edict of canonization, and even Xue Linglong, a demon sect witch, was canonized. However, there are still women in Lu Chen's harem who have not been canonized. One is Wu Yunwan and the other is Mirong Shuer. They have special status and cannot be canonized now. To canonize Wu Yunwan as a royal concubine, at least you have to wait until the Dahou dynasty is destroyed, and to canonize Mirong Shuer as a royal concubine, you also need to wait until Daiyu is destroyed. There is another person who has not received the imperial edict, and that is Chen Wanrong, who is still in Suanya Palace. However, Lu Chen has sent someone to deliver the imperial edict to Suanya Palace. Chen Wanrong will receive the imperial edict soon. After the imperial edict to canonize his wives and concubines was issued, Lu Chen asked the official newspaper to release the news. Soon, the people of Daxia knew about the canonization. When they saw that Lu Chen had not established a queen, they were very puzzled. It stands to reason that most emperors would establish a queen first, but Lu Chen did not do this. Not only did he not establish a queen, he instead established several imperial concubines, and among Lu Chen's women, the lowest was a concubine. This is completely different from the previous emperor's harem. People really can't understand why the new emperor canonizes the women in the harem like this. Of course, although people were very curious, they didn't think there was anything wrong with this. Many of the policies formulated by the new emperor were originally different from the past. Maybe there was some special reason why the new emperor enthroned people like this. After the canonization matter reached the ears of the ministers, many ministers felt that something was wrong, especially those officials from the capital. However, they did not mention this matter at the subsequent court meeting. The officials from the capital took Li Rui's words seriously. Now they only care about political affairs. The affairs of the harem are the emperor's family affairs. The emperor can do whatever he likes. Although there is no queen, the prince has been decided anyway, and they know who they should rely on. Mu Chongtian didn't feel anything wrong with the fact that his daughter was not made a queen. He was also aware of Lu Chen's thoughts. Lu Chen probably didn't want to see fighting in the harem, so he didn't make a queen. And there is another advantage of not making Mu Zixuan the queen. Mu Zixuan's son Lu Chongfeng has already been made the prince. The status of the prince itself is quite special. If there is another queen, then the Mu family's position in the court will be the influence will become greater. Mu Chongtian still understands the principle that a big tree attracts the wind. Although Lu Chen seemed to be indifferent, Mu Chongtian was very aware of Lu Chen's control over the court, and he was worried that if the Mu family's influence became too great, it would become a thorn in Lu Chen's side. This is good now. His grandson will be the emperor in the future. As long as the Mu family does not do anything extraordinary, the Mu family will also have a very high status and will not be feared by the emperor. As soon as the crown prince was established, Daxia's internal affairs were stabilized. The next most important thing was to destroy Dahou. Soon, Daxia's army launched a full-scale attack on Dahou. When the vassal kings of Dahou heard about Daxia's attack, they all sent out all the soldiers in their fiefdoms and continued to capture young men. Those vassal kings had long heard that Tianren went to Kyoto to threaten Emperor Wu, but they had no intention of surrendering just like that. Once they surrendered, Emperor Wu's immediate royal family might have a chance to survive, but they, the vassal kings, could not necessarily. Once Dahou is destroyed, the next thing Daxia will do is to liquidate the vassal kings of Dahou. After all, the power of the vassal kings is intertwined, and compared with imprisoning the forces of these vassal kings, it is more difficult to directly destroy them. Of trouble. Although they knew that Dao was probably not Daxia's opponent, these vassal kings still tried their best to capture strong men and sent ordinary people to the front lines of the war as cannon fodder. However, no matter how many soldiers Dao sent to the front line, they could not withstand Daxia's artillery fire. In just 1 month, several vassal kings in Dao had been wiped out and several important counties were lost. Dao Dynasty. Kyoto. In the court, it was extremely quiet at the moment. The battle reports during this period had made Dao's civil and military officials completely despair. Their Dao army was like paper in front of the Daxia army. As long as they encountered the Daxia army, Dao's army would be defeated in less than a day, and they could not even delay the advancement of the Daxia army. In the past few days, many ministers have begun to secretly discuss defecting. Everyone knows that Dao is finished and the country will be destroyed sooner or later. At this moment, the martial emperor on the dragon throne had a dark face, and the power of the warrior on his body was released. His face was a little ferocious, and he looked very scary. The ministers in the hall did not dare to raise their heads and look into his eyes. At this moment, soldiers suddenly rushed in from outside the main hall. After the soldiers entered the main hall, they immediately knelt down and reported loudly, "Your Majesty, Fengtian County has been lost, and King Yi committed suicide." Before Emperor Wu could say anything, a messenger rushed in from outside. He also knelt in the hall and said, "Your Majesty, Kainyo County has been lost, and the King of Yu has surrendered to Daxia." A moment later, a soldier rushed in again from outside the hall, also reporting the news of the defeat in the front-line battle. Emperor Wu didn't speak, his face was still dark. At this moment, the ministers in the hall were breaking out in cold sweat, even though Dawu's demise was already certain. But Emperor Wu could still go crazy once before he perished. Emperor Wu had no way to defeat Daxia, but he still had ways to defeat the ministers in the court. What the ministers feared most now was that Emperor Wu would have mental problems and then kill his ministers to vent their anger. Emperor Wu was a man with a bad temper, so it was not impossible for him to do such a thing. End of chapter. Chapter 491. The first use of. The air in the hall was unusually dull and hot, as if someone had been suffocated in a jar and then grilled outside by a fire. After an unknown amount of time, Emperor Wu glanced at the civil and military forces of the court, and then asked, "The Great Xia army is approaching with great force. Do you have any good strategies for retreating from the enemy?" After hearing this, the ministers lowered their heads, as if they had not heard what Emperor Wu said. At this point, what else can they do, and there are heavenly beings in Daxia. The only way Dao can defeat Daxia is that Dao also has heavenly beings in charge. But if there were heavenly beings in charge of Dao, how could Daxia occupy half of Dao in such a short period of time? Seeing that the entire court was silent, Dawu clapped his hands and smashed the armrests of the dragon chair to pieces. The next moment, Emperor Wu stood up from the dragon chair and left the hall directly. Soon, Emperor Wu came to the imperial study room. He looked at the scenery outside the imperial study room and didn't know what he was thinking. There is no heavenly being in Dao. Based on this alone, Dao has no hope. When he thought that his ancestors' foundation was about to be defeated by his own hands, Emperor Wu's inner energy kept flowing everywhere. At this time, Emperor Wu punched the windowsill, smashing the entire windowsill. Is there no other way? I'm not willing to give in. How come that boy can get the support of so many heavenly beings? Why can Daxia have those weapons? Why? As Emperor Wu roared, his true energy raged in the room, destroying everything in the room. Just when Emperor Wu was going crazy, a soldier said outside the study, "Your Majesty, there is a letter from the princess." Upon hearing this, Emperor Wu sneered. That unfilial daughter wrote a letter at this time. You don't need to think about it to know what the content of her letter is. It is nothing more than persuading yourself to surrender and then give up all the Wu family's foundation to that yellow-mouthed kid from Daxia. When he thought of this, Emperor Wu became even more angry, but he finally said, "Bring it in." The next moment, the soldier entered the imperial study and handed the letter written by Wu Yunwan to Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu took the letter, tore open the envelope and glanced at it. Emperor Wu frowned when he saw the contents of the letter. It was indeed similar to what he had just thought. Wu Yunwan's letter was to persuade him to surrender. However, Wu Yunwan added a lot of content to the letter. For example, Wu Yunwan revealed her current state, and she also told Emperor Wu that she already had Lu Chen's child. Seeing these contents in Wu Yunwan's letter, Emperor Wu suddenly thought of something. He never believed that Wu Yunwan, an unfilial daughter, would be willing to give up the power in her hands. Now it seems that this unfilial daughter is still reluctant to give up the power in her hands, but she seems to have some other ideas. Could it be that this unfilial daughter planned to fight in the palace of Daxia, then become the queen of Daxia, and finally let her child become the prince of Daxia, or even the future emperor, and then she would become the powerful queen mother behind the scenes? Emperor Wu sneered. This unfilial daughter thought Lu Chen was a fool. The fact that Lu Chen could get the support of 4 heavenly beings meant that there must be something special about him. As for that unfilial daughter, after Dao was destroyed, she no longer had the support of Dahu's entire dynasty behind her. What could she do to usurp the position of queen, and what could she do to help her child become the prince? But having said that, if Wu Yunwan can break through and become a heavenly being, all this is not impossible. But it is so easy to become a heavenly being. Until now, there are no heavenly beings in Dahu. At this time, Emperor Wu obviously misunderstood Wu Yunwan's meaning, but it was precisely because he misunderstood Wu Yunwan's meaning that Emperor Wu felt much better. He hoped in his heart that one day Wu Yunwan's child would become the emperor of Daxia. When Wu Yunwan's child became the emperor of Daxia, it was equivalent to the continuation of his bloodline. When he thought of this, Emperor Wu felt a sense of relief in his heart. At this moment, Daxia, Yanchanj. Lu Chen was busy in the imperial study. At this time, Bai Qingqing's voice sounded outside the imperial study, "Your Majesty, Commander Qin and concubine Yu want to see you." Lu Chen said calmly, "Come in, everyone." Then Qin Yushan and Dongfang Longjaiyu entered the study. Entering the study, the two of them said in unison, "Greetings to your Majesty, long live your Majesty." Lu Chen put down the pen in his hand, looked up at Dongfang Longjaiyu and said, "Longjaiyu, if you have anything to do, please tell me first." Dongfang Longjaiyu said, "Your Majesty, the first batch of basic knowledge books have been printed, and 200 copies of each category have been printed." Hearing this, Lu Chen was slightly surprised. The printing factory was very efficient, and it actually printed so many books in such a short period of time. The first batch of basic knowledge books included a lot of books. 200 copies were printed in each category, and the first batch contained at least 1,000 copies. It seems that the printing factory may not be closed at night recently. Lu Chen then said, "First send these books to the people on the list I gave you last time and let them take a look first." At this point, Lu Chen thought of something and continued, "Come to me." Dongfang Longjaiyu walked directly in front of Lu Chen without any hesitation. Lu Chen slowly raised his hand, and the tip of his index finger touched Dongfang Longjiayu's forehead. The next moment, Lu Chen mobilized all his spiritual power and used his magical power enlightenment. In an instant, countless unfamiliar knowledge poured into Dongfang Haoyu's head. The physical and chemical knowledge from the earth immediately stunned Dongfang Haoyu. She didn't expect the world to be like this. Lu Chen was also extremely surprised. He didn't expect that just a thought could impart some of his knowledge to others. This magical power was simply amazing. At this moment, Dongfang Longjaiyu didn't even react. Lu Chen said at this time, "This is the knowledge I imparted to you. You can digest it when you go back today. If there is any knowledge you are interested in, you can check it out in the library." Those books. Hearing Lu Chen's words, Dongfang Longjaiyu came back to her senses. She quickly saluted and said, Thank you, Your Majesty, for teaching me this precious knowledge. Dongfang Longjio continued, Your Majesty, with the opening of the library, more and more things will happen. I would like to ask Your Majesty for some more manpower. Although Dongfang Longjio is in charge of the library, she is also responsible for the transfer of knowledge. The combination of these two things makes her a little busy. So she decided to ask Lu Chen for a few more people. Of course, what she wanted was definitely not people who would do the work, but managers. Lu Chen searched in his mind for people suitable to work in the library, and then a person appeared in his mind, and then he said, I will send you another person in a few days. Dongfang Longjio continued to express her gratitude, Thank you, Your Majesty. I'm resigning. Then Dongfang Longjio turned around and left the imperial study room. After Dongfang Langyu left, Lu Chen's eyes fell on Qin Yushan again. Commander Qin, is there any important information recently? Qin Yushan quickly stepped forward and placed the two envelopes on the desk in front of Lu Chen. These two letters, one is a report about the Dacian plague, and the other is information about the barbarians in the north. After hearing Qin Yushan's words, Lu Chen quickly opened one of the letters and read it carefully. After reading the content of the first letter, Lu Chen frowned slightly. Chapter 492 What, do you miss your little lover? The first letter Lu Chen read was information about the barbarians in the north. The spy mentioned in the information that the barbarian goddess in the north seemed to have invented some kind of battle formation, which was extremely powerful. When the barbarians use battle formations, they can even condense some illusory things, and these things can directly destroy a mountain. Lu Chen thought in his mind, battle formation? Although there were battle formations in this world in the past, those battle formations were just ordinary offense and defense. It is impossible for an ordinary battle formation to condense any concrete entity. Such an illusory thing doesn't look like it's from this world at first glance. Could this barbarian goddess be? Did he come from the mist world? The restrictions in the mist world have long been loosened. If Wu Yunwan and Yu Huang can come back from the mist world, it is naturally possible for other people in the mist world to escape from the mist world. Maybe, that barbarian goddess is a strong man who escaped from the misty world. Lu Chen suddenly felt a bit pressured. He could destroy a battle formation on the top of a mountain. He didn't know if the heavenly beings could destroy the battle formation of the barbarians. It seems that he must seize the time to unify several dynasties. If the barbarians go south and destroy Dayu, I am afraid that the difficulty will rise significantly if he wants to destroy Dayu occupied by the barbarians. He must hurry up before the barbarians capture Dayu before destroying Dayu. Thinking of this, Lu Chen tore open the second piece of information and read it carefully. Seeing the contents of the intelligence, Lu Chen frowned again. After Jin Yiwei's investigation, it was found that the plague in Dacian originated from the southern sea. When the fishermen were fishing, they picked up a gold box. The fishermen thought they would make a fortune, but that night, a plague broke out in the entire fishing village where the fishermen were located. The first plague spread from the gold box. After seeing the contents of the intelligence, Lu Chen thought to himself that there seemed to be something in the southern sea of Dacian. I don't know if this plague can be eliminated. If there is no way to solve the plague in Dacian, how will I be able to occupy Dacian then? After Lu Chen pondered for a moment, he looked at Qin Yushan and said, Commander Qin, come here. Hearing this, Qin Yushan thought of the scene just now. He was a little curious about what Lu Chen had done to Dongfang Longjio, and then he walked directly in front of Lu Chen. After arriving in front of Lu Chen raised his hand, condensed spiritual power on his fingertips, and then used the magical power of enlightenment again. The next moment, Qin Yushan's mind was filled with countless knowledge about bacteria and viruses. Qin Yushan's pupil shrank, feeling very incredible. But at this moment, Lu Chen suddenly felt as if the spiritual power in his body had been drained, and he instantly became weak all over. At this time, the system prompts sounds. The number of times the host uses attunement in a day is related to the host's realm. The host has not yet broken through to the realm of heaven and humans, and can only use at most 2 attunement magical powers in a day. Lu Chen thought to himself, no wonder his body suddenly became so weak. It turns out that using magical powers consumes the spiritual power in the body, but it's okay. He can enlighten many people twice a day and give many people modern powers. Knowledge. Just when Lu Chen was thinking about enlightening 2 people every day, Qin Yushan quickly knelt on the ground and saluted and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty, for giving me knowledge." Lu Chen said calmly, "Get up, I have a very important task for you." Qin Yushan said, "Your Majesty, please speak." Qin Yushan actually guessed what the mission Lu Chen was talking about was. Lu Chen had taught him so much knowledge about bacteria and viruses at this time. This was obviously because he wanted to investigate the plague and prepare for the future of Daxia. Prepare to destroy Dagon. Lu Chen said at this time, "I plan to ask you to take a trip to Dakian to investigate the characteristics of the Dakian plague and find out what the plague is, whether it is a bacteria or a virus. This mission is more dangerous. You must be extremely careful when you go to that place." Qin Yushan immediately said, "Yes, I must find out the specific situation of Dakianwen." Lu Chen said, "Okay, go down and prepare. I have taught you the methods of preventing and treating the plague. When you arrive in Dakian, you will teach these methods of preventing and treating the plague to other Jinyue soldiers so that they should always pay attention." Qin Yushan said, "Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty." Subordinates resign. After the words fell, Qin Yushan stood up and left the imperial study. Seeing Qin Yushan's leaving back, Lu Chen thought in his heart that he hoped the plague in Dakian was caused by bacteria or viruses. If it is not caused by these 2 things, but by something beyond one's own knowledge, then it may not be that easy to eliminate this plague by then. Thinking of this, Lu Chen felt a headache. At this moment, Swanyu Palace. On a mountain peak, a Yungxian fairy in white clothes stood quietly on the top of the mountain, looking at the green mountains in the distance. At this time, Chen Wanrong appeared behind Yun Xianxian, "Master, this disciple plans to go down the mountain." Yun Xianxian said expressionlessly, "Why, do you miss your little lover?" Chen Wanrong said, "Before I returned to Swanyu Palace, I told my junior brother that I would go down the mountain to see him this year." Hearing Chen Wanrong call Lu Chen his junior brother, Yun Xianxian snorted coldly, "If you don't focus on cultivation, you will know that your greed for the pleasure of men and women will harm you sooner or later. After you come down from the mountain, give the evildoer a message by the way. Tell him that the restrictions in the mist area are about to be broken. In less than 20 years, the restrictions in the mist area will begin to disappear. Let him hurry up and prepare. There are many strong men in the mist zone who are better than heavenly beings. With his current strength, there is no way he can fight against the strong men in the mist zone." Chen Wanrong was startled when she heard Yun Xiangxian's reminder. 20 years? This time is too short. Can Lu Chen grow up in 20 years? After Chen Wanrong came to her senses, she quickly thanked her and said, "Thank you, Master, for reminding me. I will go down the mountain and tell my junior brother about this." Yun Xianxian didn't say anything more, and still looked into the distance. Chen Wanrong then turned and left. After Chen Wanrong left, Yun Xianxian continued, "I don't know where the other evil disciple went. He hasn't shown his face in so many years. Is it possible that the last time the restrictions in the mist world were loosened, she ran away to the mist world?" The other evil disciple that Yun Xianxian spoke of was not Lu Chen's mother Chu Yu, but the registered disciple she had accepted, the heavenly being who hunted the Grand Master decades ago. It is because of the existence of that disciple that the number of great masters in this world has dropped significantly. Many great masters are hiding and do not dare to show up casually. Although it was rumored that she had returned to Swanyu Palace for retreat, she actually only came back to say goodbye to Yungxian. However, Yungxian was in retreat at the time, and Yungxian did not see her leave. Later, when Yun Xianxian came out of seclusion, he learned that the named disciple had left Suanyu Palace and went to an unknown place. There is no news until now. End of chapter. Chapter 493, Using the Magical Power of Enlightenment on Murong Shwetter. In the Dead of Night. Perform. Wanning Palace. Inside and outside the palace, the lights were bright. In Murong Shwetter's room, Murong Shwetter was wearing a translucent white gauze dress. She was holding a writing brush in her slender hand and was writing at the desk. Ever since she was dismissed from her position as minister to Daxia by Dayu, Murong Shwetter has been staying in the palace, and she has nothing to do all day long. This kind of life is indeed a bit too dull for her. When she was in Dayu, she was also known as the Prime Minister of the Inner Palace and was very busy every day. Although she was busy, she couldn't stop feeling the taste of power. Now that she has arrived in Daxia, she has no power at all and is just the toy of that bad guy. Thinking of this, Murong Shwetter sighed slightly. She put down the brush in her hand and was about to call the maid in when she suddenly heard the maid's voice coming from the door, "Greetings to your majesty." Hearing this, Murong Shwetter was stunned for a moment, and then she walked towards the door, but before she reached the door, a voice appeared behind her. "Shwetter, are you feeling particularly bored recently?" Hearing this voice, Murong Shwetter looked back and saw that Lu Chen was standing in front of the desk, admiring the words she just wrote. Murong Shwetter said, "It's indeed a bit boring." Lu Chen put down the paper in his hand and said with a smile, "I have a job here. I don't know if you are interested in it." Hearing this, Murong Shwetter was stunned for a moment, and then she asked, "Your Majesty, aren't you afraid that I will reveal Daxia's secrets?" Lu Chen slowly walked towards Murong Shwetter and said as he walked, "I dare to let the enemy princess next door control some of Daxia's industries. Do you think I will worry about you leaking Daxia's secrets?" After the words fell, Lu Chen came to Murong Shwetter's side. He directly stretched out his big hands and took Murong Shwetter's soft waist into his arms. The gauze garment on Murong Shwetter's body was tightly attached to her body. Just by holding Murong Shwetter, she could feel the temperature of her body, and it felt very silky to the touch. Lu Chen's big hands were gently stroking Murong Shwetter's body while he said, "I am very confident about my women." Being touched by Lu Chen like this, Murong Shwetter suddenly felt her body heat up and her pretty face became hot. She kept calm and asked, "What kind of job?" Lu Chen said, "You know the Royal Library of Daxia, right?" Hearing this, Murong Shwetter recalled the books she read in the Royal Library, and then she said, "I know, I went to the Royal Library a few days ago to read the books in it. The contents of the books in the Royal Library were particularly weird, somewhat subverting Murong Shwetter's understanding of the world." Murong Shwetter was a little worried that the knowledge was Daxia's confidential content. Although Dongfang Longjaihu said that Lu Chen's wives and concubines could go in and read the books, when Murong Shwetter thought that she was not Lu Chen's wives and concubines, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Murong Shwetter never went in again. At this time, Lu Chen lay his head on Murong Shwetter's shoulder and said in her ear, "Longjaihu said that after the library is completed, she will not be able to manage it by herself. I plan to let you help her manage it. What do you think?" Murong Shwetter said, "The contents of the books in the Royal Library are Daxia's secrets, right? Are you really not afraid that I will leak those things?" Lu Chen said with a smile, "Not only am I not afraid, I also hope that you can pass on that knowledge to others, of course, to the people of Daxia. When the time comes, I will teach you some basic knowledge about this world, and then you will be the teacher and pass on that knowledge to the craftsmen of Daxia." Hearing this, Murong Shwetter said, "I have only read a few books, and I don't understand the knowledge in those books. How can I teach it to others?" Lu Chen gently blew on Murong Shwetter's delicate earlobes, and then said, "You don't need to worry about this, I will personally teach you the knowledge. Murong Shwetter said, Your Majesty is so busy, he probably doesn't have time. Murong Shwetter thought in her heart that the knowledge of the books in the Daxia Royal Library could not be learned in a day or two. If Lu Chen taught her personally, she didn't know how long it would take. As an emperor, Lu Chen had so many government affairs waiting for him to handle, and he also had such wives and concubines waiting for him to nourish him. How could he spend so much time teaching himself the knowledge in the Daxia library? Lu Chen smiled and said, It doesn't take much time. I can teach you in just one night. Murong Shwetter was slightly stunned after hearing Lu Chen's answer. One night? How can it be? She might not be able to memorize all the knowledge in a book in one night. Can Lu Chen teach her the basic knowledge of the books in the Royal Library of Daxia in one night? Just when she was still thinking about how Lu Chen was going to impart knowledge to her, Lu Chen's paws were already placed on her hips, and then he hugged her soft body and walked towards the soft couch in the room. Seeing this scene, Murong Shwetter was immediately speechless. What kind of knowledge was this guy trying to impart? I'm afraid what he said about imparting knowledge was all a joke. What he really wanted to do was still those things. Murong Shwetter didn't think much. She followed Lu Chen to the soft couch. At this time, Murong Shwetter's jade cheeks were slightly red, and the cold and talented woman was already emotional. Murong Shwetter twisted her body slightly, turned around, and then fell on the bed. Lu Chen's body also fell down, just in time with her. Face to face. Lu Chen didn't take his time as before. He directly blocked Murong Shwetter's red lips and kissed her. After a while, the two entered the state. Murong Shwetter didn't expect that Lu Chen would stop tormenting her today. If it were before, Lu Chen would have to write for a long time. As midnight passed, Murong Shwetter's mind was still in a daze. Suddenly, she felt as if she had a lot more physical and chemical knowledge in her mind. Murong Shwetter woke up instantly. What was going on? Why did she suddenly understand so many things? At this time, Lu Chen was holding her waist and still busy with his affairs. Murong Shwetter wanted to ask him, but she couldn't. Murong Shwetter quickly remembered what Lu Chen said to her before. Lu Chen said that he could teach her the basic knowledge of the Royal Library in one night. Now it seems that everything Lu Chen said is true. It did only take one night, but how did this guy do it? Murong Shwetter was a little puzzled. Is it possible that just by doing what they are doing, Lu Chen can transfer knowledge directly into his brain? Is it possible? Just when Murong Shwetter was curious about how Lu Chen did it, Lu Chen suddenly became violent. Soon Murong Shwetter fell into despair again and stopped thinking. Lu Chen is not an ordinary person. He can directly use certain skills to cure people's diseases. It is not surprising that he has the ability to directly impart knowledge, and this guy should tell her what this is. What happened? End of chapter. Chapter 494. Thanks? How are you going to thank me? Early morning. Magpies were chirping outside the window, and the people in the room were so noisy that they opened their eyes. After Murong Shwetter opened her eyes, she was about to raise her hands to rub her eyes, but found that her hands were clasped by Lu Chen's hands and pressed against her sides. And this guy was lying on his body, his head on his shoulder, sleeping soundly. Murong Shwetter was a little helpless. This guy was really unscrupulous. If she was not a warrior above the Grandmaster level, sleeping with this guy pressing her down as a pillow all night would probably make her body feel uncomfortable. Seeing that Lu Chen was still sleeping and Murong Shwetter couldn't disturb him, she looked at the curtain above her head and thought about the magical knowledge that Lu Chen taught her last night. At this time, Murong Shwetter found that she could easily recall the knowledge. It seemed that it was not a fantasy caused by her being tortured by this guy, but that those things actually existed. With this basic knowledge, she can easily understand the books in the Daxia Royal Library, and then she can also teach others the knowledge in those books. After Murong Shwetter thought for a while, Her eyes turned to Lu Chen, who was lying on top of her. She suddenly thought of something else. She had told this guy that she would leave him once Daiyue was destroyed, and now this guy had imparted such important knowledge to herself. If Daiyue is really destroyed one day, will he let himself go? Although what Lu Chen passed on to her was basic knowledge, possessing this basic knowledge was enough to change the world. She did not believe that Lu Chen would leave without worries. Is it possible? Mirong Shuer was startled. Didn't this bad man want her to leave Daxia in the first place? When she thought of this, Mirong Shuer frowned slightly. Yes, it must be like this, otherwise how could he be so reassured about himself? Just when Mirong Shuer was thinking this, Lu Chen's body twisted slightly, as if he had woken up. The two were now intimate, and Mirong Shuer's eyebrows trembled slightly and she bit her silver teeth. At this time, Lu Chen's voice rang in Mirong Shuer's ears, "You woke up so early? Why don't you sleep a little longer?" Mirong Shuer said calmly, "Your Majesty is busy with many things today, and I'm afraid that it will delay His Majesty's handling of government affairs." Lu Chen did not continue this topic, but asked, "How is it? Have you digested the knowledge I imparted to you?" Mirong Shuer said, "Your Majesty is really a strange person, and he actually uses such methods. But I'm a little curious. Since your Majesty will directly impart knowledge to others, why do you need me to teach others? Can't your Majesty just impart those basic knowledge directly into other people's minds?" Mirong Shuer initially thought that Lu Chen could only impart knowledge to others when doing such things with men and women, but then she thought about it and found that this seemed a bit impossible. She thought so because her brain was damaged by this guy. It was obvious that he had some kind of immortal method to pass on knowledge to others. Lu Chen said, "Although I can directly impart knowledge to others, this ability has many limitations. Not everyone can do it, so others still need someone to teach me." Lu Chen did not directly tell Mirong Shuer that he could only use the attunement magical power twice a day. After hearing Lu Chen's answer, Mirong Shuer thought for a moment. Indeed, there should be some restrictions on this amazing method. If there were no restrictions, wouldn't this guy have already imparted that knowledge to his wives and concubines? At this time, Lu Chen let go of Mirong Shuer's jade hand, then stood up slowly, placed his hands on both sides of her hair, and stared at her beautiful face. "From today on, you are the member of the Royal Library of Daxia Deputy Curator." Mirong Shuer thanked and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." She was quite happy that Lu Chen could find something for her to do, which meant that Lu Chen trusted her, and she could no longer stand the boring time of staying in the room doing nothing every day. Lu Chen's other wives and concubines had children, but she had nothing. She could only practice calligraphy, write poems, and occasionally draw Lu Chen's portrait in the palace every day. Seeing Mirong Shuer thanking him, Lu Chen smiled slightly, "Thank you? How are you going to thank me? You won't just say thank you, right?" Mirong Shuer asked calmly, "How would your Majesty want me to thank you?" Lu Chen said, "How about you give me a few children?" Mirong Shuer chuckled in her heart. Sure enough, this guy had the issue of reproducing offspring in his mind. Mirong Shuer then said, "Whether I can give birth to a child for your Majesty is not something I can decide. It depends on whether your Majesty has the ability." Mirong Shuer's words were obviously provocative. No man would say that he was incompetent. Lu Chen laughed and then said, "Do you think I don't have this ability? Then I will have to focus on taking care of you in the next period of time." Having said this, Lu Chen leaned down directly and put his mouth on Mirong Shuer's soft lips. Not long after, the beautiful woman in the next room heard Mirong Shuer's apology coming from this room. Hearing Mirong Shuer's apology, Wu Yunwan, who was half lying on the soft couch, couldn't help but sneered. Although she didn't know what Mirong Shuer said to Lu Chen just now, looking at the current situation, Mirong Shuer was very maybe he provoked Lu Chen. Wu Yunwan said to herself, what a maid who doesn't know how to live or die, how dare you provoke that guy." Having said this, Wu Yunwan lowered her head slightly and glanced at her belly. Wu Yunwan was thinking at this moment that she, a pseudo-celestial being, had been made pregnant by Lu Chen. Sooner or later, that girl Murong Shwetter would be pregnant by Lu Chen. When Murong Shwetter got pregnant, when she saw it, Murong Shwetter used something to choke her. When Murong Shwetter saw her suffering from morning sickness before, she would choke her from time to time, saying that her body and Lu Chen were really compatible. She was a fake heavenly person, and she was pregnant with Lu Chen's child in such a short period of time. Specifically for Lu Chen to conceive a child. Although Wu Yunwan also thought about giving birth to 3 children quickly and breaking through to the realm of heaven and humanity, Murong Shwetter's words seemed to make her a bitch. She felt that in Murong Shwetter's eyes, she had become an animal who only knew how to reproduce. Which made Wu Yunwan feel very unhappy. Wu Yunwan felt extremely happy when she heard Murong Shwetter's voice coming from next door. She secretly encouraged Lu Chen in her heart, just like this, she tried to make Murong Shwetter pregnant as soon as possible. Didn't this girl's movie mock her as an animal who only knows how to reproduce? When Murong Shwetter's belly gets bigger, she will want to see what Murong Shwetter's expression looks like. In the next few days, Lu Chen really came to Murong Shwetter's room every day. After Murong Shwetter found that begging for mercy was ineffective, she wanted to seduce the beautiful woman next door. As a result, Lu Chen didn't accept her trick at all. Even if Murong Shwetter hid in Wu Yunwan's room and pretended to chat with Wu Yunwan, Lu Chen would immediately carry Murong Shwetter to the next door. Murong Shwetter finally had to admit defeat. A few days later, Lu Chen was busy handling government affairs in the imperial study. Bai Qingqing entered the imperial study and said, "Your Majesty, all the materials you want are ready." End of chapter. Chapter 495 Arrangement of the 7 Killing Formation to Protect the Pulse. After hearing Bai Qingqing's words, Lu Chen immediately stood up from the desk and said to himself, "Finally, we can set up a formation." Although the defensive effect of the pulse protection 7 kill formation is good, it requires a lot of materials. Lu Chen was worried about not being able to collect so many materials at first, but he did not expect to find the materials needed to build the formation so quickly. Thinking about it, if this world did not have the materials needed to build the 7 killing formation to protect the veins, the system would not be able to give this formation as a reward to itself. Lu Chen walked from the desk to the main hall, then walked to Bai Qingqing's side, directly hugged her waist wearing white armor and said, "Take me there." Bai Qingqing said expressionlessly, "Your Majesty, please come with me." Bai Qingqing then took Lu Chen to Fenjiun Palace. The materials used to construct the Pulse Protection 7 killing formation were relatively expensive, so Bai Qingqing had people directly send them to Fenjiun Palace to avoid any problems. As soon as Lu Chen entered Fenjiun Palace, he saw his wives and concubines gathered in front of a pile of things, discussing the use of these things. After seeing Lu Chen coming, the girls quickly moved out of the way. Chu Yukan asked curiously, "Your Majesty, what are these things for?" There were some useless-looking things pushed on the ground, including tree trunks, leaves, animal bones, and several buckets of blood from unknown creatures. At this time, Lu Chen said, "These things are used to set up formations. With the formations, even strong men in the realm of heaven and humans will not be able to mess around in Yanchange." Upon hearing this, the girls were stunned for a moment, and then became extremely happy. Especially Mu Zixuan and Dezhou Xiaozhou, the 3 of them have the lowest cultivation level. Every time they leave the palace, they have to take a strong person with them, and they are also very afraid to go out. After all, Lu Chen has too many enemies. No one knows how many spies are working in Yanchange. These people are likely to catch them and use them to threaten Lu Chen. For them, Yanchange is more dangerous now than before. If the formation can protect them all the time, then they will be able to move freely in Yanchange from now on. Although the palace is very big, it is still much smaller than Yanchenj. They will get tired of staying in the palace all the time. After Mu Zixuan came to her senses, she quickly asked, "Your Majesty, can this formation protect our safety at all times?" Although Lu Chen said that even heavenly beings would not dare to mess around in Yanchenj, Mu Zixuan did not think that this formation would be able to protect their safety. If this formation is a passive defense, it will only be effective when it is activated. When something happens to them, this formation may not have time to activate. Lu Chen instantly understood what Mu Zixuan wanted to ask, and he said directly, "This formation can be activated at any time, as long as it is my wife, concubines, and my children, but this formation cannot harm my wives, concubines, and children." Child. If you go out in the future, as long as you are still in Yanchenj, you can also mobilize the power of this formation. However, the spiritual energy in this world is very thin. Although this formation can absorb the surrounding spiritual energy, it cannot be activated for a long time. So it's better not to activate the killing array unless absolutely necessary. The 7 killing formation for protecting the pulse is divided into 2 parts. One part is the actively activated killing formation, and the other part is passive defense. The passive defense part is always running. As long as a powerful enemy approaches and the 7 killing formation detects murderous intent, it can keep the powerful enemy away. The active killing array means that when the enemy enters the formation, Lu Chen's wife, concubines, and children can actively mobilize the killing array to kill the enemy. If they actively mobilize the killing array, a large amount of spiritual energy will be consumed. At this time, Lu Chen came to the pile of formation materials and prepared to set up the formation. However, at this moment, the system prompt sounded. The host's cultivation level has not yet reached the heavenly realm. With the host's current spiritual power, it is impossible to arrange the entire pulse protecting 7 kill formation. Lu Chen was stunned when he heard the notification sound. What? Unable to arrange? So what does the system reward him with this formation? Lu Chen soon realized that although he couldn't arrange it, he had heavenly beings under his command, and he could let those heavenly beings arrange it. Just when Lu Chen was thinking this, the system beep sounded again. The host can ask heavenly beings to deliver spiritual power to the host, so that the host can complete the arrangement of the 7 kill array to protect the veins. Seeing that the system had said so, Lu Chen did not hesitate and said directly to Bai Qingqing, "Xiao Bai, let someone call Xia Yuan and Mu Hongguang." "Yes, Your Majesty." Then Bai Qingqing left Fenjiayun Palace. After Bai Qingqing left, Lu Chen was not idle. He began to seriously think about how to arrange the formation. Not long after, Bai Qingqing appeared in Fenjiayun Palace with Xia Yuan and Mu Hongguang. Fenjiayun Palace is Lu Chen's harem. Except for Lu Chen's children, no men are allowed in the harem, so Xia Yuan and Mu Hongguang always feel a little uncomfortable. Lu Chen had no choice. He wanted to set up an array in Fenjiayun Palace, so he could only let Xia Yuan and Mu Hongguang come here. Moreover, they were just setting up a formation. The two of them would not stay in the harem for too long, and Lu Chen didn't care too much. Then Lu Chen said to Xia Yuan and Mu Hongguang, "Master Xia, Master Mu, I am going to set up a formation here. The two of you will transfer the spiritual power in your body to me to ensure that the spiritual power in my body is sufficient." Upon hearing this, the two people quickly said, "Yes, Your Majesty." Immediately, Lu Chen began to use his spiritual power, and the next moment, all the formation materials on the ground floated. Immediately afterwards, a formation pattern appeared in Lu Chen's mind. Lu Chen instilled spiritual power according to the formation pattern, and the materials suspended in the air began to mix. After the materials were mixed together, they turned into a black liquid. The black liquid then gathered on top of Lu Chen's head, forming a formation pattern. But at this moment, it was obvious that the spiritual power in Lu Chen's body could no longer keep up. Seeing this scene, Mu Hongguang and Xia Yuan quickly took action and transferred the spiritual power in their bodies to Lu Chen. Lu Chen instantly felt that the spiritual power in his body became extremely abundant again, and Lu Chen continued to arrange the formation. After everything was ready, the black formation pattern above Lu Chen's head rose rapidly and became larger and larger. Soon the pattern covered the entire Yancheng. Seeing this scene, the people of Yancheng were stunned. After Lu Chen felt that it was almost done, he immediately let the formation fall down. The formation diagram in the sky fell instantly, which shocked the people of Yancheng. Some people were already preparing to run away, but the formation diagram fell very fast. Before people had time to hide, the formation map had already fallen to the ground. Seeing that the formation diagram posed no threat to people, the people of Yancheng breathed a sigh of relief. The next moment, Lu Chen took the initiative to activate the formation, and then the pattern of the formation gradually changed from black to gold, and emitted golden light, and these golden lights quickly gathered into a semicircle, covering the entire Yancheng city. Shrouded in it. Seeing this scene, Lu Chen couldn't help but think, is this the 7 killing formation for protecting the pulse? Unfortunately, there are no enemies now, so there is no way to try the effect of the killing formation. Lu Chen didn't think much about it. He then waved his hand and the golden shield over Yancheng disappeared. End of chapter. Chapter 496. Long time no see, we have a lot to do tonight. After Lu Chen arranged the 7 kill formation to protect the pulse, some ministers from Yancheng hurried to the palace and waited outside the palace. The formation pattern just now obviously spread from the palace. The ministers were a little worried and didn't know what happened inside the palace. At this time, Lu Chen looked at a red formation on the ground. This was the core formation of the 7 killing formation. Then he continued to use the spiritual power in his body, and then he bit his finger, and there was blood on his finger. It dripped on the formation eye of the 7 killing formation that protects the pulse. The next moment, several red rays of light flew out of the formation's eyes. These red rays of light went straight to Lu Chen's wives and concubines, and flew to their eyebrows. Immediately afterwards, their bodies emitted bursts of red light, and soon there was something more in their minds. It was as if they were connected to the world of Yancheng, and they could also sense the entire 7 vanguards. The killing array exists. As soon as Lu Chen finished all this, several female guards hurriedly entered Fenjiun Palace. Your Majesty, there are many ministers outside the palace asking to see you. Lu Chen immediately understood what was going on. The noise just now was too big and must have caused some worries. Lu Chen immediately said, go and tell the people outside that the noise just now was caused by me. I will tomorrow when I go to court, I will mention what happened today and ask them all to go back. Yes. After hearing Lu Chen's words, the female guard turned around and left Fenjiun Palace. Soon, the ministers at the entrance of the palace heard the words of the female escort, and the ministers didn't think much about it. If something dangerous happened just now, with those heavenly beings around, it shouldn't be a big deal. Even if something really happens, if heaven and man can't solve it, then it's impossible for ministers like them to handle it. Then the ministers had no choice but to go back. At the same time, Lu Chen was teaching Mu Zixuan and the others how to use the 7 kills formation to protect the pulse. People with a higher level like Chu Yukan and others could quickly master the method of mobilizing the 7 kills formation to protect the pulse, but Mu Zixuan and Xiao Dezhou it won't work this week. Their level is relatively low, and they have not practiced martial arts before, so their foundation is relatively weak. It is still difficult for them to fully master how to use the pulse protection 7 killing formation. In the evening, Lu Chen was still teaching Mu Zixuan and the others how to use the pulse protection 7 killing formation. At this moment, a maid hurriedly ran up to Lu Chen. Your Majesty, concubine Chen has returned to the palace. Hearing this, Lu Chen was stunned for a moment. Of course, concubine Chen was talking about Chen Wanrong. When Chen Wanrong left the capital, she said she would come down this year. At this moment, Music Xuan said, "Your Majesty, Sister Chen finally came back. You can go to her place. We will practice the formation later." Lu Chen smiled slightly, "Okay, I will continue teaching you tomorrow." Then Lu Chen went to Yunrong Palace. The origin of the name Yunrong Palace corresponds to the Yunrong courtyard in the North Palace. Originally, Lu Chen's concubines all had their own palace, but they seemed to have gotten used to living there, and Lin Wanyun was reluctant to separate from the place where Chen Wanrong lived. "So I just kept it." Someone later pointed out that the name Yunrong Palace does not comply with the etiquette system, because the name of Yunrong Palace is composed of the names of Lin Wanyun and Chen Wanrong, and Lin Wanyun's name is in the front, Chen Wanrong's name is in the back, but Chen Wanrong is the imperial concubine, Lin Wanyun is a noble concubine. Therefore, in the opinion of some people in the inner palace, Yunrong courtyard should be changed to Rongjiun courtyard. Even Lin Wanyun thought so, but Lu Chen did not let people change it. The reason why the North Palace put the word Yun in front was because Lin Wanyun was older than Chen Wanrong, and in Chen Wanrong's eyes, Lin Wanyun was almost like her mother. Since Lin Wanyun and Chen Wanrong must live in the same palace, and Lin Wanyun is older than Chen Wanrong, naturally the name cannot be changed casually. Of course, these are all small things, and Lu Chen actually doesn't care about them. Soon Lu Chen arrived at Yunrong Palace. At this time, Chen Wanrong was in Lin Wanyun's bedroom. The two women were sitting on the floor and talking about Swanyu Palace at the table. Lin Wanyun has been no different from Swanyu Palace since she left Swanyu Palace last time. She has not returned to Swanyu Palace even once. Now she can only understand the current situation of Swanyu Palace through Chen Wanrong. Lin Wanyun, who was sitting on the lotus blanket, moved her plump hips slightly and sighed softly, "I don't know if I will be able to return to Swanyu Palace in my lifetime." Lin Wanyun still has some feelings for Swanyu Palace. Not long after she left the capital, she joined Swanyu Palace and spent most of her time in Swanyu Palace. Now that she is married to Lu Chen and has become Lu Chen's woman, living in this palace all day, I am afraid that she may not be able to return to Swanyu Palace in her lifetime. She doesn't feel bad about her current life. The little villain comes to torment her from time to time, and there are many sisters in the harem, so her life is considered wonderful. But she also wanted to go back and have a look, but she didn't know if Lu Chen was willing. Seeing that Lin Wanyun was in a low mood, Chen Wanrong raised her jade hand, grabbed Lin Wanyun's hand, and then said, "Aunt Yun, if you want to go back to Swanyu Palace for a visit, just tell Lu Chen, he should agree." Lin Wanyun said, "I'm afraid it's not that easy. I'm not like you. You are the master of Swanyu Palace. Swanyu Palace can't do without you. I'm just an ordinary hair care worker in Swanyu Palace. It's the same with or without me. Even if His Majesty agrees, others will say nothing if they know that I am an emperor's woman running around. And I married His Majesty as the daughter of the Lin family. There is the entire Lin family behind me. If I do anything inappropriate, I will definitely be impeached." As soon as Lin Wanyun finished speaking, a man's voice suddenly came from the door, "Aunt Yun, if you want to go back to Swanyu Palace, then go back and have a look. Who dares to make irresponsible remarks?" As soon as the voice fell, Lu Chen appeared in the room. After seeing Lu Chen, the two women stood up at the same time and said, "See your Majesty." Lu Chen smiled slightly, walked directly to Lin Wanyun, hugged her plump body and said, "Didn't I say that there is no need to be so polite in the inner palace?" Having said this, Lu Chen glanced at Chen Wanrong again, then came to Chen Wanrong and held her waist. "Madam, you have finally come down from the mountain. If you don't come down from the mountain, I'm afraid I will have to go to Swanyu Palace to find you in person." Hearing this, Chen Wanrong asked calmly, "Your Majesty, is there something wrong with you naming me the imperial concubine?" Chen Wanrong is different from Lu Chen's other women. She does not stay in the palace often. How can a woman who stays in Suanya Palace all year round be the imperial concubine? Therefore, Chen Wanrong feels that the status conferred by Lu Chen is a bit too conferred. Taller. Lu Chen smiled and said, "What's wrong? I don't think there's any problem at all. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. We haven't seen each other for a long time. We still have a lot of things to do tonight." Hearing this, a blush appeared on Chen Wanrong's frosty cheeks. Lu Chen's eyes fell on Lin Wanyun at this time. "Aunt Yun, we won't disturb your rest. As for what you said about wanting to go back to Suanya Palace to take a look at it, you can just go back with Rong. Don't worry about what others say." End of chapter. Chapter 497. I sincerely request your majesty to send troops to attack Daxia. After hearing Lu Chen's words, Lin Wanyun was about to say something, but Lu Chen picked up Chen Wanrong in a princess hug, and then transformed, and the two of them disappeared. Seeing the empty hall, Lin Wanyun was speechless. This bad guy was just as bad as ever, and he was too anxious. It is estimated that their voices will be heard from the bedroom next door soon. Lin Wanyun stopped thinking about it. She walked to the bed, pulled out a roll of paper, and blocked her ears. After Lu Chen carried Chen Wanrong to the next door, he went directly to the soft couch. At this time, Chen Wanrong was sitting on Lu Chen's lap, while Lu Chen's hands were wrapped around Chen Wanrong's waist. At this time, Lu Chen said, "This is your bedroom. See if there is anything that needs to be rearranged. I will have someone do it tomorrow." Although this place is decorated according to the Yunrong courtyard in the Buwang mansion, Chen Wanrong is now an imperial concubine after all, and her status is relatively noble, and the rooms here are larger than those in the Yunrong courtyard. The original layout will be placed here. It seems relatively empty. Chen Wanrong glanced at the entire dormitory. The main tone of the dormitory was cyan, and the curtains were all light cyan. There were some white snowdrops embroidered on the curtains. The whole room looked very cold and quiet. Chen Wanrong said calmly, "That's it, it's good." She doesn't care so much about how luxurious the place she lives is, as long as she can live in it. Just when Lu Chen was about to lay Chen Wanrong down on the soft couch to express his lovesickness, Chen Wanrong continued, "Master asked me to tell you that the restrictions in the mist world will collapse in less than 20 years at most. So that you can prepare as soon as possible." Hearing this, Lu Chen was stunned. Less than 20 years? So fast? He remembered that he had heard someone say before that the restrictions in the mist world would take at least 100 years to disappear. Why did it become 20 years now? And it's still less than 20 years old. Doesn't Yun Xiangxian's words mean that the ban will disappear in more than 10 years? Will the powerful man from the foggy world come to this world in more than 10 years? This is too fast. Seeing that Lu Chen fell into silence, Chen Wanrong saw Lu Chen's thoughts, and she said, "Xianyu Palace will also help you resist the strong men coming out of the misty world." Hearing this, Lu Chen came back to his senses and asked, "Will Master help me?" Chen Wanrong said, "Yes, Master just said that she hates you, but after she returned to Suanya Palace, she still thought about you from time to time." Hearing this, Lu Chen smiled and said, "Talk about me? When you say nagging, you mean you are scolding me behind my back, right?" Chen Wanrong did not answer this question. After Yun Xianxian returned to Suanya Palace, she did say how about that traitor from time to time. Seeing that Chen Wanrong didn't speak, Lu Chen raised his hand, lifted her chin and said, "Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. It's a long night, let's talk about our own affairs." Hearing this, Chen Wanrong hummed softly. Seeing the fairy's cold and shy look, the fire in Lu Chen's heart was instantly ignited, and then he laid Chen Wanrong down on the bed and pressed him up. When she met her little lover again, Chen Wanrong no longer had the same reserve as before, and she became much more proactive. Deep down in her heart, she had completely recognized Lu Chen as a man. At the same time, Great Xia Dynasty. Outside the Empress's palace, there was a heavy wind and rain, lightning and thunder, and it had been raining for several days. Wearing a white undershirt, Emperor Yu stood in front of the window, looking at the rainy night outside. She had read the letters from Lu Chen and Wu Yunwan a long time ago. She was very angry at first, thinking that Lu Chen dared to write to her. This was a pure provocation to her. But Emperor Yu soon calmed down. Through the letter Wu Yunwan sent her this time, she discovered that Wu Yunwan seemed to really have feelings for Lu Chen. This made Emperor Yu feel incredible. How could Wu Yunwan be interested in men? What is so special about this Lu Chen? Could it be that Wu Yunwan chose him because she was older and could no longer bear the emptiness and loneliness, and because Lu Chen was more handsome, young and strong? It is very common for royal princesses to have male pets, which also shows that even royal princesses have some physical needs. Wu Yunwan was already in her 30s and had never been in close contact with a man. Perhaps she could no longer bear the dull life. As a result, it was at this time that she met Lu Chen, who happened to be her favorite type, plus Lu Chen's romantic nature, the two of them got together. Thinking of this, Emperor Yu's face became extremely gloomy. At this time, there was a burst of thunder outside the window, and then a bolt of lightning appeared in the sky. The light of lightning just reflected the gloomy face of Emperor Yu. At this time, Emperor Yu heard the content of Lu Chen's letter again. Although the man did not ask for surrender in the letter, he mentioned in the letter that the ban on the foggy area in the west was about to disappear and the goddess appeared among the barbarians in the north. Lu Chen's meaning was simple. He believed that once the restrictions in the foggy area disappeared, or the barbarians from the north moved south, Great Xia would inevitably encounter a crisis of national annihilation. From another perspective, Lu Chen was trying to persuade her to surrender. Thinking of this, Emperor Yu said coldly, "It's ridiculous, you actually want me to surrender to Great Xia? How naive!" Emperor Yu was really curious as to who gave Lu Chen the confidence to think that he would surrender to Great Xia. So what if the restrictions in the western foggy area disappear, and what if the barbarians in the north are strong? No matter what kind of enemy they are, as long as they dare to harm Great Xia, she will definitely let them go without any return. As for that man, since Wu Yunwan likes him so much, when he defeats Great Xia one day, he will abolish his martial arts and reward Wu Yunwan as a male favorite. It's just a man. Emperor Yu will not fall out with Wu Yunwan just because of a man. At this moment, in Emperor Yu's heart, Lu Chen is just a toy of Wu Yunwan. The next day, in the courtroom, wearing a red phoenix robe and a phoenix crown, Emperor Yu sat on the phoenix chair and glanced at the ministers in the hall. At this time, a minister said, "Your Majesty, under the command of the barbarian goddess, the barbarians are becoming more and more powerful. Especially the barbarian battle formations are very powerful. If they continue to grow, sooner or later they will become Great Xia. Threats?" Another minister also said, "Great Xia has already sent troops to Dao. Looking at the current situation, it will be a matter of time before Great Xia destroys Dao. Once Great Xia destroys Dao, Great Xia's next target is likely to be our Great Xia. By then, we have to guard against the barbarians in the north, the invasion of Great Xia, and the Black Dragon Kingdom. Great Xia is really unsustainable." Subsequently, many ministers also stood up and expressed their inner concerns. Everyone knows that Great Xia is now in danger. Great Xia is now facing pressure from three parties. If one party cannot be resolved in advance, Great Xia will surely perish in the future. Listening to the voices of the ministers, Emperor Yu fell into silence. After an unknown period of time, a minister suddenly spoke up and said, "Your Majesty, since Great Xia will attack Dao sooner or later, then we will send troops in advance and directly attack Great Xia. Xia, now Great Xia is attacking Dao, and there is no way to mobilize too many troops to guard against Dayu. As soon as these words came out, the ministers said in unison, Your Majesty, please send troops to attack Daxia. End of this chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 498 The War between Dayu and the Barbarians. Hearing that all civil and military officials in the dynasty were thinking of sending troops to attack Daxia, Emperor Yu snorted coldly, and then said expressionlessly, What, you all think that Yu's army is the opponent of heaven and man? Hearing this, the ministers in the hall who advocated the crusade against Daxia instantly became stunned and didn't know what to say. In fact, all the ministers understand that as long as Daxia has those heavenly beings, if Dayu and Daxia go to war, Dayu will not have any advantage. One heavenly being can destroy an army, and besides, they Dayu have no weapons to deal with heavenly beings. In this case, letting their Dayu army attack Daxia means letting their Dayu soldiers die. But if they don't take advantage of this moment to attack Daxia, after Daxia destroys Dao, they will be on their own. By then, they will have no chance. Is it possible that they Dayu can only wait to destroy the country? When they thought of this, some ministers felt extremely sad in their hearts. How much effort the old emperor had spent in order to create a dynasty in this chaotic land did not expect that the Dayu dynasty would be destroyed in just a few generations. At this moment, a minister suddenly thought of something and said immediately, I heard that the battle formations practiced by the barbarians are very powerful. Not only can they defend against the attacks of heavenly beings, but they are also extremely powerful. Maybe this battle formation of the barbarians can be used to deal with the heavenly beings. Hearing this, some ministers seemed to have grasped some life-saving straw. The Minister of War stood up and said, Your Majesty, if what Li Shilang said is true, then we must find a way to obtain the barbarian battle formation practice method. This may be our last chance as Dayu. Although the news that the barbarian battle array can fight against the heavenly beings also came from the barbarians, which is somewhat unbelievable, this is the only way that Dayu knows that can deal with the heavenly beings. No matter how unbelievable it is, they still have to try it. What if the barbarian battle formation really has such an effect? And now the barbarians are still practicing battle formations. If the barbarians' battle formations are really useless, they won't be able to practice every day. Now the barbarians have not yet mastered the battle formations. At this time, Dayu attacks them, and the barbarians have no way to play the role of the battle formations. Therefore, this is not only Dayu's last chance, but also Dayu's best time to eliminate the threat from the north. Although the army of Daxia is unstoppable in Dao, it takes a lot of time to unify Dao. It is easy to destroy a country, but it is difficult to occupy a country. What's more, Dao is a dynasty with a long history. In less than half a year, even if the Dao royal family is destroyed, Dao it's also hard to calm down. With Dao as a check, Daxia has no energy to care about what Dayu is doing for the time being. If the barbarians in the north can be wiped out, even if Daxia attacks in the future, Dayu will have one less threat from one direction and can focus all his thoughts on it. Put it on to resist the invasion of Daxia. At this time, Emperor Yu's phoenix eyes swept across the ministers in the hall. She could see that the civil and military officials in the court were ready to make a last move. Then Emperor Yu said, From now on, Dayu has entered a state of war. Except for the 100,000 troops on the border of Daxia, all the troops will be transferred north. In half a month, I will personally conquer the barbarians. After hearing this, the civil and military officials of the court immediately knelt down and said, Your Majesty is wise. Emperor Yu sneered in his heart, what a wise thing, this was just a last resort. She was thinking, if the barbarians really have a battle formation capable of dealing with heavenly beings, it means that the barbarian goddess is probably from the mist world, and that woman will not be easy to deal with then. Although she has entered the Hedeo stage and is a pseudo-celestial being, and because she has practiced special skills, her strength is infinitely close to that of a celestial being, she is not a real celestial being after all, and after she leaves the mist world, she has no having fought against the real gods, perhaps her strength has dropped a lot compared to when she was in the misty world. Emperor Yu was not sure whether he could defeat the barbarian goddess. However, she believed that in this world with weak spiritual energy, her own strength was limited, which also meant that the other party's strength was limited. Even if the barbarian goddess is a celestial being from the mist world, he still has a great chance of winning. In the mist world, it's not like she has never killed heavenly beings. After deciding to attack the barbarians in the north, Daiyuo began to prepare from top to bottom. Several armies in the southeast used to guard against Daxia were transferred to the north in a short time, leaving only 100,000 troops. Warning Daxia. Although there were no trains in Daiyuo, the troops were mobilized very quickly. Within half a month, most of the troops had been mobilized to the north. Daiyuo's movements were so loud that the barbarian spies were naturally aware of Daiyuo's intentions. Soon the news that Daiyuo was going to attack the barbarians reached the ears of the barbarian goddess Mu Yongzi. Northland. Barbarian goddess's tent. Mu Yongzi was wearing a dress sewn with gold threads, her body was shining with gold, and the gems on her head reflected colorful light. She was lying half on the soft couch, revealing her smooth white belly and her long legs. In her white and jade-like hands, she held a piece of information that had just been sent from Daiyuo. Looking at the contents of the intelligence, Mu Yongzi had no expression on her face. After a moment, she said calmly, "It seems that Daxia has put a lot of pressure on Daiyuo. Daiyuo actually started a battle. Idea. I don't know who gave Daiyuo the courage to come and attack the forces of this palace." After hearing Mu Yongzi's words, the barbarian soldier kneeling on the ground said, "Goddess, what should we do now?" Mu Yongzi replied calmly, "Summon the tribal leaders immediately. Since Daiyuo wants to see the effect of the battle formation, I will satisfy them." Originally, Mu Yongzi planned to seek stability and wait until the barbarian soldiers became proficient in using battle formations before going south to destroy the major dynasties. In the end, she didn't expect Emperor Yu to be so courageous that he dared to come and attack them in advance. As a woman, she even admired Emperor Yu. But in her opinion, this is like hitting an egg with an egg. Just because she didn't lead her troops south doesn't mean she doesn't have the strength, it's just that she wants to destroy all the dynasties at once. If someone died early, she would not tolerate him. Soon, the leaders of the barbarian tribes gathered together, and the barbarian army also completed its assembly in a very short time. The war between Daiyuo and the barbarians is about to break out. Daxia Dynasty. Since Chen Wanrong came to Yancheng, Lu Chen has been soaking in Wenro Township every day. Last night, Lu Chen came to Chen Wanrong's bedroom again and tormented Chen Wanrong again. Facing Chen Wanrong, an aloof fairy, the desire to conquer in her heart has always been very strong. It's just a pity that after working with Chen Wanrong for so many days, Chen Wanrong didn't get pregnant. It seems that pregnancy really depends on luck. It's not that easy to do miracles with great force. In the early morning, Lu Chen was sleeping soundly in the warm fragrance of Chen Wanrong's soft jade. At this time, Bai Qingqing's voice sounded at the door. "Your Majesty, are you up?" Bai Qingqing's voice was very soft, but Lu Chen's perception was very strong and he still heard it. Lu Chen opened his eyes immediately. He was about to raise his head, but found that Chen Wanrong's jade hand was still holding his head, restricting his movement. End of chapter. Chapter 499. The barbarians don't have battle formations? Lu Chen always felt strange with Chen Wanrong holding his head like this. At this moment, Chen Wanrong also noticed that Lu Chen's head moved slightly. He must have woken up, so he let go of Lu Chen's head. Lu Chen then slowly stood up, supporting both sides of Chen Wanrong's hair with his hands, admiring Chen Wanrong's beautiful face. Chen Wanrong's jade face is as if carved from white jade, smooth and tender, and at the same time exudes a holy aura, with a hint of shyness in her aloofness, which is fascinating. After taking a look at Chen Wanrong, Lu Chen turned to Bai Qingqing at the door and said, "Xiao Bai, what's the matter?" Bai Qingqing heard Lu Chen's voice and immediately replied, "Daiyu and the barbarians are at war." Hearing this answer, Lu Chen was slightly stunned. No wonder Bai Qingqing came to find him early in the morning. It turned out that such a big thing happened. Bai Qingqing is his woman, so she knows very well that he likes to lie in a woman's arms after getting up in the morning and won't get up for a while. She usually doesn't disturb him, only when she encounters important things. We'll call him. Daiyu's war against the barbarians was somewhat important to Daxia. After all, Daiyu was the next one to be destroyed by Daxia, and Daiyu was Daxia's main focus. At this time, Lu Chen turned to look at Chen Wanrong below him, gently touched her cheek, and said softly, "Rong, I have something else to do, so I won't accompany you." Chen Wanrong said calmly, "Well, go ahead." Lu Chen didn't hesitate too much and got up from Chen Wanrong's body. Then, with Chen Wanrong's service, he quickly got dressed and left Chen Wanrong's bedroom. After a while, Lu Chen appeared in the imperial study, where Liang Zong was waiting to report on the war between Daiyu and the barbarians. After seeing Lu Chen coming, Liang Zong quickly saluted Lu Chen, "Greetings to your majesty, long live your majesty." Lu Chen said lightly no courtesy, then went straight to the desk and sat down. "Commander Liang, why is Daiyu thinking of starting a war against the barbarians at this time? Have you found out the specific reason?" Lu Chen was a little curious. What was Emperor Yu doing when he had nothing to do? Run to attack the barbarians. The barbarian territory is so large, and the barbarian people are very good at escaping. Even if Daiyu can defeat the barbarian army, the barbarians will go directly to the deeper northwest and wait for a while to come out. Daiyu will have nothing to do with those barbarians. It is impossible for Daiyu to send troops to chase deep into the barbarian activity area. Liang Zong replied, "According to Jin Yiwei's investigation, the reason why Daiyu attacked the barbarians was because of the battle formations that the barbarians were practicing." Battle formation? Lu Chen muttered for a moment, then fell into deep thought. Lu Chen had also heard about the battle formation a long time ago. He was also worried that the battle formation would bring trouble to Daxia in the future, but they wanted to destroy Da'u now and had no time to deal with the matter of the Northwest barbarians. However, he still sent many spies to inquire about the specific situation of the barbarian battle formation. Liang Zong continued, "At this time, it is rumored that the battle formations used by the barbarians can not only resist the attacks of heaven and man, but are also extremely powerful, so some people in Daiyu believe that as long as they can obtain the battle formations of the barbarians, they will be able to compete with Daxia in the future." Hearing Liang Zong's words, Lu Chen chuckled. It turned out that this was what Daiyu had in mind. But having said that, if you can destroy the barbarians by going north, you can not only reduce the pressure, but also gain a battle formation. This is a double win for Daiyu. The most important thing is that Daxia's focus is now on Da'u, and there is no time to pay attention to what is happening in the northwest. This is a good time for Daiyu. Lu Chen thought for a while and then said to Liang Zong, "Let Daiyu's spies be active and keep an eye on the situation of Daiyu and the barbarians, especially the barbarians' battle formation. I want to know how big this battle formation can be." Roll. Liang Zong bowed his hands and said, "Yes, Your Majesty." Having said this, Liang Zong took out the information from his sleeve and said, "Your Majesty, this is the information sent back by Detective Daiyu." Bai Qingqing walked up to Liang Zong at this time, took the information from Liang Zong's hand, and then handed it to Lu Chen. After Lu Chen received the information, he tore it open and glanced at the contents inside. The contents were similar to what Liang Zong said. The civil and military forces of Daiyu dynasty seemed to place their last hope on the barbarian battle formation. Lu Chen thought to himself that he hoped this battle formation would not have much effect. If the battle formation could really withstand the attacks of heavenly beings, the barbarians in the north might delay his unification of the world in the future. Seeing Lu Chen glance at the contents of the intelligence, Liang Zong said, "Your Majesty, if there is nothing else, I will leave first." Lu Chen said, "Well, let's go down. My subordinates, please leave." Liang Zong then turned and left. After Liang Zong left, Lu Chen said to Bai Qingqing, "Xiao Bai, have someone send this information to Grand Scholar Zhuge." Bai Qingqing took the letter from Lu Chen's hand, turned and left the imperial study. Lu Chen thought at this time that if the barbarian battle formation was really capable of resisting heavenly beings, then the identity of the barbarian goddess might not be simple, and the strength of this barbarian goddess was still just a question mark. Their spies on the grassland only knew that this barbarian goddess was very powerful, but no one knew how powerful she was. Anyway, all the leaders and kings of the barbarians combined were no match for the barbarian goddess. The fact that she was able to unify the entire barbarian tribe in such a short period of time proved her strength. Lu Chen thought in his mind that this so-called barbarian goddess might also come from other worlds, and she might have reached the realm of heaven and humans. He had to be prepared to fight with heaven and humans. In the blink of an eye, the war between Dai Yu and the barbarians broke out in full force. Because Emperor Yu was marching in person, the vanguard troops of the barbarians were unable to withstand Dai Yu's attack. In just a few days, the vanguard troops of the barbarians were beaten and fled everywhere. Northwest Land. Dai Yu, the commander's camp. Emperor Yu, wearing a black and gold armor, looked at the barbarian map in his hand and fell into deep thought. At this time, there were more than a dozen generals in the camp. They looked at Emperor Yu quietly without saying a word. After a long time, Emperor Yu spoke, "We are about to arrive at the former site of the barbarian royal court. They have not used the battle formation until now. Something is not right. According to their intelligence, the barbarians have been practicing battle formations since they were unified by the barbarian goddess. As a result, until now, the barbarian soldiers have not used the so-called battle formations to deal with Dai Yu's army. It was so smooth for them along the way, so smooth that it was a bit abnormal." Emperor Yu doubted that the barbarian goddess deliberately prevented the barbarian vanguard troops from using the battle formation in order to lead them into the hinterland of the barbarian activity area and then outflank Dai Yu's army. Judging from the current situation, this possibility is very high. After hearing what Emperor Yu said, a general said, "Could it be that the barbarians don't have a so-called battle formation at all, and this is just a rumor spread by the barbarians?" At this time, another general said, "Why are the barbarians spreading such rumors? Moreover, the battle formations of the barbarians were found by our own people, so it cannot be a rumor." The general who raised the rumor added, "But we have almost reached the old site of the barbarian royal court. The barbarian army has not used battle formations yet. If they want to have that kind of battle formation, why don't they come out?" End of chapter. Chapter 500 The decisive battle between Dai Yu and the barbarians. The generals in the commander's camp were very puzzled as to why the barbarian army did not use battle formations. Since the barbarian battle formation is so powerful, then just use it to fight Dai Yu. In this situation, the barbarian army is no different from paper. At this time, a general put forward a different view. He looked at Emperor Yu and said, "Your Majesty, I think the barbarians don't use battle formations, not because they don't have battle formations, but because they haven't mastered the rumors yet. That battle formation. If the barbarians have already mastered the battle formation, the barbarian goddess may have led the barbarian army south before Dai Yu's army went north." After hearing this, the generals in the camp looked at me and I looked at you, and they all felt that what this general said made sense. The information they had received before was that the barbarians were practicing using that special battle formation. Perhaps it was because Dai Yu's crusade was relatively timely that the barbarians were not proficient in the use of battle formations. This made the barbarian army have no choice but to run away when they saw them. Just when everyone thought what the general said made sense, Emperor Yu said, "Not necessarily." Hearing these two words, the generals all looked at Emperor Yu. Emperor Yu continued, "The barbarian goddess wants to lead me deep into the hinterland of the barbarian activity area, and then cut off Daiyu's logistics and take Daiyu away." The main force caught them all in one fell swoop. After the words fell, the generals were stunned for a moment. The possibility that Emperor Yu said was not impossible, and the possibility was very high. Maybe the barbarian goddess really thought so. Emperor Yu continued, "According to the intelligence collected, the barbarians have been practicing using the battle formation of the barbarian goddess for a long time. Even if they are not able to use it skillfully, they can always use it. It is impossible that they have not used it even once." After hearing Emperor Yu's analysis, a general asked, "Your Majesty, what should we do next? If we continue to attack, our logistics line is too long, and there is a high probability that the supply behind us will not be able to keep up." Emperor Yu fell into deep thought. She looked at the map on the table quietly, seeming to be thinking about something. After a long while, Emperor Yu finally spoke, "I will stay here temporarily and let the vanguard explore the way. I want to see how long the barbarian goddess can endure it." After Emperor Yu's order was issued, Daiyu immediately sent out vanguard cavalry and penetrated deep into the hinterland of the barbarian activity area. At the same time, in the camp of the barbarian royal court, Mu Yongzi was also looking at the map. She glanced at the marks on the sheepskin map and said, "The other party should have noticed our purpose. Their progress is getting slower and slower. I'm afraid they won't continue to move forward in the next 2 days." At this time, a barbarian king stood up and said, "Goddess, let us, the Shawu tribe, be the vanguard. Our tribe is the first to learn battle formations and is the most familiar with your battle formations. As long as we, the Shawu tribe, are allowed to fight, Daiyu's army will not come out. We will be defeated in an hour." After hearing this, Mu Yongzi glanced at the Sandwich King. The Sandwich tribe was indeed the first tribe to practice using battle formations, and the barbarian soldiers of the Sandwich King tribe were very powerful, with many high-level warriors. Let them use battle formations. Formation, the battle formation can last longer. Although Mu Yongzi has seen the army led by the Sandwich King use battle formations, the battle formations of the Sandwich Division have not experienced actual combat so far. It is hard to say how powerful they can exert the Shangqing Tenglong formation. Seeing that the Sandwich King was so eager, the other kings of the barbarian tribe couldn't stand, and they also wanted to perform well in front of Mu Yongzi. "Goddess, let us, the Blackwater tribe, be the vanguard." Although the Sandwich tribe was the first to practice battle formations, they have almost never practiced them in actual combat. We at least used them once when we attacked other tribes. "Goddess, let's let our Duohui tribe take the vanguard." "Goddess, it's us." For a time, the camp was in chaos, everyone wanted to be the vanguard. They know very well that whoever serves as the vanguard will have the greatest credit. When Daiyu is captured in the future, the more rewards they can get from the goddess, so no one of them is willing to give this opportunity to others. But at this moment, Mu Yongzi said, "Sandwich King, since you want to be a pioneer so much, I will give you this opportunity. I hope you will not disappoint me." Seeing that Mu Yongzi chose him, the Sandwich King was very excited. He quickly knelt down and said, "Thank you, goddess. I will definitely live up to the goddess's expectations." At this time, the voice of a barbarian soldier sounded outside the camp, "Goddess, battle report from the front." Mu Yongzi said calmly, "Come in." Immediately afterwards, the barbarian soldiers who delivered the news entered the camp, then knelt on the ground and said to Mu Yongzi, "Goddess, Daiyu's army has set up camp and is not moving forward. However, they have sent a vanguard cavalry to continue deeper." Hearing this, Mu Yongzi chuckled and said, "It seems that Emperor Yu has indeed discovered the purpose of this palace. Since they have discovered it, there is a high probability that they will not move forward. In that case, it's our turn to take action. As soon as she finished speaking, Mu Yongzi began to arrange her troops. She planned to defeat Dai Yu's main force in the shortest possible time, and then deal with Dai Yu's queen. She knows Dai Yu relatively well and knows the importance of Queen Dai Yu to Dai Yu. As long as they can deal with Queen Dai Yu in this war, they will basically win Dai Yu. Originally, in order to seek stability, she planned to take action against Dai Yu in 5 years. She did not expect that Queen Dai Yu would actually come to her door. She cannot be blamed for this. In less than half a day, Dai Yu's vanguard cavalry discovered the dark barbarian army. Dai Yu's vanguard cavalry did not expect that they would discover the real main force of the barbarians so quickly. Dai Yu's cavalry hurried back to report the news. When Emperor Yu heard that the barbarian army was gathering again and preparing to launch an attack, she knew that her guess was right, and the other party had indeed led them here. However, Emperor Yu did not have any worries. Since the founding of Dai Yu, there have been many wars between the Dai Yu dynasty and the barbarians. However, Dai Yu won most of the wars, and the barbarians could only run to the northwest hinterland to hide. Some barbarians found that they could not help Dai Yu, and even ran to the north. Emperor Yu's heart was full of fighting spirit at this moment. She hadn't fought against a strong person for a long time. She had a hunch that the barbarian goddess must be a very powerful enemy. At dusk, the red sunset hung in the sky, and Dai Yu had already set up a military formation, waiting for the arrival of the barbarian army. After an unknown amount of time, countless dark figures appeared in the distance. Under the light of the setting sun, the barbarian soldiers seemed to be wearing bronze armor. The number of barbarian soldiers is very large. It is obvious that this is the real main force of the barbarians. These barbarian soldiers are strong, and they are basically warriors. Only then did Dai Yu's soldiers realize that the barbarians they fought at the beginning were probably small tribes. The momentum of the barbarian army was very strong. Just approaching Dai Yu's army, the horses of Dai Yu's army were frightened and kept roaring, and some horses even had the idea of escape. Not only the horses, but also Dai Yu's soldiers felt as if they were being targeted by some terrifying beast, causing their whole bodies to tremble uncontrollably. End of chapter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Thank you.